The camera is already rolling as the father reaches a distance of about 10 yards from the bank of the MYUU quarry dam. The water is an eerie glass-like sheet of dark green reflecting the jagged, vertical rock walls of the Eswatini hills. In the frame, the man's head and shoulders bob with a steady rhythm. He is swimming away from the shore, his strokes creating small mechanical ripples that travel out toward the center of the flooded pit. It looks intentional. There is no splashing, no shouting, just a man moving through a heavy, unnatural stillness. The boy holding the phone says something off camera, his voice light and casual, the sound of a kid filming a routine summer moment. But then the man reaches a visible threshold where the water color shifts from a murky green to a deep void-like black. Suddenly his rhythm breaks. The smooth overhand strokes stop. He transitions into a frantic treading motion, his arms churning the surface into a ring of white foam. His head tilts back, eyes fixed on the sky. He isn't moving forward anymore. He's just trying to stay up.
Daddy, dapat manjan. Daddy, dapat manjan. Oh, ma. Asa ko ni? Yep.
The stillness of the quarry makes the struggle feel disturbingly quiet. There are no waves to fight, only the dead weight of the water. You can see the man's effort increasing as his head begins to dip. Every time he pulls his arms down to push himself up, he only gains an inch of height before sinking back to his chin. He is reaching for the surface, but the water offers no leverage. There are no branches to grab, no shallow ledges, and no gradual slope. In an abandoned quarry like this, the ground doesn't taper off. It drops straight down into a freezing, pressurized abyss.
Daddy. 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 Yeah, hamburger me.
The man's breaths become shorter and more visible. You see a momentary hesitation, a pause where he seems to be trying to calm his heart rate, but the cold is likely already seizing his muscles. These pits are notorious for cold water shock, where the temperature can drop 40 degrees just a few feet below the surface, turning a swimmer's limbs to lead in seconds. He tries to turn back toward the bank, but the sheer effort of the turn costs him his remaining buoyancy. His face disappears for a second, then re-emerges, his mouth wide as he gasps for air that is becoming harder to reach. The boy's voice changes. The casual curiosity has gone, replaced by a mounting, quiet confusion. The man's hands break the surface one last time, fingers spread wide, grasping at the empty air. He goes down once more, his forehead slipping under the green tint of the water. The camera keeps recording the empty space where he was standing just seconds ago. There is no splash, no final cry, just a heavy silence of the hills. The footage ends with the boy still holding the phone, pointing it at the spot where the water has already closed over. That quarry is still there, still open water, still the same drop, still no warning signs adequate to what it takes from people. Some dangers announce themselves slowly, the way that water did. What you're about to see announced itself as something else entirely, and by the time anyone understood what it was already too late to stop it. The camera light cuts through the heavy, stagnant air of the high-tread international recycling plant, illuminating a path through the debris. It's August 10th, 2016, and Joe Phillips is moving deeper into the shadows of the massive decaying factory in Lockport, New York. His friend is right behind him, the lens of a phone capturing the jagged silhouettes of rusted machinery and stripped wiring hanging from the ceiling like vines. Every footstep echoes against the concrete, crunching over broken glass and shattered paperwork. The space is a hollowed-out maze of dark corridors and industrial bays. Joe reaches down and picks up a loose scrap of paper from the floor. He flicks a lighter, and the flame blooms bright against the darkness. He holds the burning paper out like a torch, the orange glow flickering off the brick walls. They move through the back of the building, laughing and lighting small pieces of trash, then dropping them as they wander deeper into the plant.
This is how you make like a real big fire.
You crush it?
Wait, no. See?
Oh, it's gonna spread out.
Look through the smoke.
Bro, that's so cool. Oh my god, this is amazing.
Look, smoke.
Bro, that's so cool.
The flames are small, barely licking the air before they fall behind them into the shadows. They aren't looking back. They're focused on the next room, the next hallway, and the next turn. Behind them, a stray spark from the torch drifts onto a pile of dry insulation. A small orange point starts to grow on a stack of forgotten rubber scraps. As they walk away, the flicker on the pile of rags becomes a steady, silent flame. It reaches a wooden pallet, climbing the side of the slats. By the time they turn a corner into a new section of the factory, the light in the hallway behind them has changed. It isn't dark anymore. It's a dim, pulsing orange. A thin gray veil of smoke begins to creep along the ceiling, following them into the next bay. The mood shifts when Joe stops and turns his head. He sniffs the air. The smell is thick, chemical, and heavy. He looks back at the doorway they just walked through, and the corridor is glowing. A low, rhythmic roar begins to vibrate through the floorboards. The flames have merged into a single massive front that is already blocking the path they took to get in. Panic replaces the excitement instantly. "We gotta go," one of them shouts, their voices tight and high-pitched over the growing sound of the fire. In the chaos of the smoke, they lose sight of each other. One of them feels a draft of fresh air from a side exit and lunges through it, tumbling out into the night air and gasping. Joe doesn't follow. He's pushed back by a sudden surge of heat, trapped in a pocket of the building where the ceiling is already beginning to buckle in shower sparks. Outside, his friend is screaming his name, but the roar of the fire is too loud to hear anything else. Realizing the exits are gone, Joe pulls out his phone. He isn't calling for a rescue. He leaves a voicemail. It's short, a desperate, breathless goodbye whispered into the receiver as the light of the fire fills the room.
I'm really fucked. I'm gonna die. Scheiße. I don't know. I don't know how to die this way.
The factory burned for 3 straight days, a massive pillar of fire that could be seen for miles. It destroyed 4 nearby buildings and forced the evacuation of over 200 families in the Lockport area. When the smoke finally cleared, only the charred skeleton of the plant remained standing. Joe Phillips never made it out of the building. The voicemail he left is the only record of the final minutes inside. The area around the factory is silent now, just to feel the scorched concrete and rusted metal. Joe Phillips made one phone call when he realized he wasn't getting out. One voicemail. That was what he had left.
The factory, I'm now joined by Lockport Mayor McCaffrey. Thank you for joining me. Can you just kind of start by giving an overview of how many residents have been impacted or how are impacted right now?
Sure. We have 9 streets that were evacuated last night. It's about 200 homes. That evacuation is still in place right now until our fire chief, Chief Brady, reverses that. But at this point, it's still evacuated area. First of all, we've got fire departments here from all over the region assisting us. I think right now we have about 6 agencies helping us. Last night we had 26. So the fire is a bit more controlled.
The next clip is about a different kind of last record, footage shot by someone who knew exactly what he was doing, who had done it dozens of times before, and who climbed to the top of a 62-story building alone to do it one more time. Wu Yongning started his career as a film extra and a stuntman for low-budget productions in China. Looking to increase his income and visibility, he began filming himself climbing skyscrapers and cranes without safety equipment. He posted these videos on platforms like Huazhao and Weibo, where he eventually gained over 1 million followers. To maintain his audience, each video required a higher level of risk. He moved from sitting on edges to hanging from them by his hands, often performing pull-ups until reaching the point of physical exhaustion. The growth of his channel created a cycle of increasing technical difficulty. As his viewers became accustomed to standard rooftop footage, The demand for more extreme angles and longer durations grew. To outperform his previous records, Wu began incorporating stunts that allowed for a zero margin of error. Each new video removed another layer of safety, transitioning from stable structures to slippery decorative ledges. Once a stunt began, there was no backup system or secondary grip to rely on if his primary strength failed. This escalation led him to the MYUU Center. By November 2017, the pressure to produce viral content had increased. A crowdfunding competition offered a $15,000 prize for the most popular Daredevil video, money Wu intended to use for his mother's medical expenses and his own upcoming wedding. He traveled to the MYUU Center in Changsha, a 62-story skyscraper, specifically to film a stunt that would secure the prize. Because the roof was restricted, he likely had to free climb the exterior of the upper floors to reach the summit. The camera is set on a tripod, positioned on a narrow ledge at the very top of the building. It is November 8th, 2017. Wu Yongning is alone. The wind is a constant low-frequency roar against the microphone, occasionally snapping against the lens. Below him, the city is a distant, hazy grid of gray rooftops and moving white dots. Wu wipes his palms on his trousers. He is breathing in short, shallow cycles. He approaches the edge. There is no railing, only a polished, decorative lip. He crouches, placing his hands on the cold stone. He begins to lower himself. First, his right leg dangles into the empty air, then the left. He is now suspended by his fingers alone. His knuckles are white, pressing hard into the ledge. He stays still for a moment, his body swaying slightly in the crosswind. He begins the first pull-up. His movement is slow. You can see the tension in his forearms as he begins his chin level with the top of the building. He lowers himself back down. He does the second. His elbows are shaking now, a fine tremor that travels up his arms. He pauses at the bottom of the second rep, his head tilted back, looking up at the sky. He adjusts his grip, sliding his right hand an inch to the side. The stone is slick. He attempts a third pull-up, but he only makes it halfway. His momentum stalls. He drops back down to full arm extension. This time, he doesn't pause. He immediately tries to hook his feet against the side of the building to find leverage. His sneakers scrape against the glass and polished masonry, making a sharp, frantic scratching sound. There is no traction. His feet slide off the vertical surface again and again. He tries to heave his chest toward the ledge, but his arms remain locked straight. His fingers are beginning to shift. He reaches up with one hand, trying to find a better hold further back on the roof, but the flat surface offers nothing to grab. His body is pressed tight against the side of the skyscraper. Every time he tries to kick upward, his center of gravity pulls him further away from the wall. The wind gusts. His right hand slips, the fingers curling into a claw as they lose their purchase. He catches himself with his left, but the sudden jolt saps his remaining strength. He is motionless for 3 seconds, his weight hanging entirely from his fingertips. His head is stuck down between his shoulders. There is no shouting, there is only the sound of the wind and the faint rhythmic scratching of his shoes against the glass. His grip fails. The transition is silent. His hands simply vanish from the top of the frame. The camera remains fixed on the ledge, recording the empty space where his fingers were just seconds ago. The camera continues to record the empty terrace for another hour. It stays at the edge, a fixed, unblinking eye, looking out at the Changsha skyline until the battery runs out. Wu is gone. The footage remains on the roof. The only record of the 45-foot fall onto a lower terrace below. Wu's camera kept recording after he was gone. The tripod held. The battery ran for another hour. Most of the footage in this video was captured accidentally, cameras running because someone hit record and then lost control of what happened next. The next clip is different. It happened in front of thousands of people under broadcast lights. In the middle of a competition, nobody looked away. Nobody could. The lights of the World Arena in Colorado Springs are harsh against the white ice as Jessica Dubé and Bryce Davison move into the center of the ring. It's February 8th, 2007, and the music for their long program is already playing. They are several minutes into the routine, their breathing heavy and audible over the broadcast microphones. They transition from a high-speed lift into a side-by-side camel spin, a move requiring them to rotate on one leg with the other extended horizontally, their bodies only inches apart. Jessica and Bryce synchronize their entry, dropping their torsos and extending their free legs at the same time. They begin to rotate. Jessica is positioned just slightly behind Bryce's orbit. As the speed of the spin increases, the centrifugal force pulls them closer together. You can see the minute adjustments in their skates as they fight to maintain their centers on the slick surface. Bryce's extended leg, tipped with a hollow ground steel blade, sweeps through the air in a wide, blurring arc. It happens fast.
Side-by-side spins now. Oh! Oh, no!
Oh my God.
No.
He clipped her. They got too close.
This is every pair's worst nightmare. Oh my gosh. Here comes the medics out onto the ice.
In a fraction of a second, the spacing fails. Bryce's skate blade doesn't pass through the empty air. It catches the light and strikes Jessica directly across the face. The sound is a sharp, wet thud. Jessica's body crumbles instantly, her momentum throwing her flat onto the ice. She clutches her face with both gloved hands. Bryce stumbles out of the spin, his own blade digging into the ice as he tries to stop. He turns back to her, his hands hovering in the air, unsure of where to touch.
Well, I think it's a good sign that she's crying. There's her coach, their coach, Annie Barabay. All she can do is stand by the boards and watch. Oh. Oh.
Hard to tell from that angle.
Looks like the cut is under her eye.
And it is Bryce. Bryce travels.
Oh.
There's no doubt about it.
I can't look.
There's no doubt about it. You want those spins to be close, but not that close.
We'll try to update you on Jessica Dubay's condition when we return.
A dark, vivid crimson begins to spread across the white floor, staining the area where Jessica is huddled. The music continues to play for several beats. No one moves. The arena is silent for a moment before the music is abruptly cut. Bryce drops to his knees beside her, his face pale as he watches the blood pool under her head. Medics are already vaulting over the sideboards, their sneakers slipping and sliding as they scramble toward the center of the rink. They reach her and begin applying pressure with white towels that turn red almost immediately. Jessica is motionless, her eyes shielded by the hands of the trainers as they lift her onto a stretcher. The movement toward the ambulance is a sequence of radio chatter and the sound of the stretcher's wheels clicking over the arena floor. Jessica is taken to Memorial Hospital. Inside the emergency room, surgeons begin cleaning the wound. The laceration is deep and jagged, starting at the side of her nose and slicing across her left cheek. They work for several hours, stitching the layers of skin back together. It takes 80 stitches to close the gap. The blade had passed within millimeters of her left eye and the facial nerves. Jessica is left with a thick, dark line of sutures held together by surgical tape. Bryce remains in the waiting room, still wearing the top half of his competition costume. The immediate aftermath is captured in the sterile, quiet hallways of the recovery wing. Jessica's face is swollen, the bruising turning a deep purple against the white bandages. She moves slowly, her balance affected by the trauma and the medication. A few days later, she is discharged, walking out of the hospital with a large patch over the left side of her face. Jessica and Bryce continue to compete for several more years, appearing at international events and eventually retiring. Jessica transitions into coaching in Quebec, standing at the boards of local rinks. The scar remains visible whenever she turns her head toward the light. She's still coaching today. Jessica Dube survived. 80 stitches, months of recovery, and she went back to the ice. That outcome, surviving something that shouldn't have been survivable, is the exception. Most of the time when the margin disappears, there's no coming back from it. The next clip is about someone who was told the margin existed, believed it, and was wrong. Pedro Ruiz III and Mona Lisa Perez ran a family YouTube channel in Hallstatt, Minnesota, which featured vlogs and minor challenges. While their audience was growing at a steady pace, Pedro wanted to create content that would result in a massive spike in views.
I'll be showing you guys on my channel, you guys are gonna be saying, "Damn it, boy."
He devised a stunt involving a high-caliber handgun and a hardcover encyclopedia, intending to prove the book could stop a bullet.
The point of this video is, I really just want to see if a 50 caliber bullet can go through a book. So, the ultimate test to see if this 50 caliber bullet will go through a book is, I'm just not going to just set it and just shoot it. No, I'm going to stand behind it, and Mona Lisa is going to shoot it.
Mona Lisa was vocally hesitant about the plan for several weeks. Pedro insisted he had tested the theory on a different book and convinced her the stunt was safe for their next upload. The camera is already rolling, set on a tripod in the grassy backyard of the home. It's June 26, 2017, around 8 p.m. The evening light is fading, casting long, soft shadows across the lawn. In the center of the frame, 22-year-old Pedro Ruiz III is standing with a thick, hardcover encyclopedia held firmly against his chest. He is smiling at the lens, his posture confident. A few feet away, his girlfriend Mona Lisa Perez is holding a gold .50 caliber Desert Eagle handgun. The weight of the weapon is visible in the way her wrists dip as she tries to find a steady aim. The environment is incredibly still. There are no sirens, no shouting, just the two of them in the yard. Mona Lisa closes one eye. Her finger rests on the trigger. She hesitates for several seconds, her entire body shaking under the physical resistance of the task. Pedro remains a stationary target, the book held tight against his t-shirt. The sound of the shot is a deafening singular crack that echoes off the surrounding houses. The camera jars from the shockwave. A small cloud of gray smoke drifts through the frame. Pedro doesn't fly backward. He simply slumps. The encyclopedia falls from his hands, thudding into the grass. He looks down at his chest, his expression shifting from confidence to a blank, stunned silence. The footage becomes a blur as Mona Lisa drops the gun and sprints toward him. Her screams fill the audio, high-pitched and jagged. Pedro, wake up. She is kneeling over him, her hands hovering over a dark circular hole that has punched straight through the center of the book and into his chest. The sirens begin in the distance, a low wail that gets louder as the minutes pass. By the time the first responders reach the backyard, the movement in Pedro's chest has stopped. The camera continues to record from the tripod, capturing the blue and red lights of the police cruisers reflecting off the windows of the house. Mona Lisa is led away toward a patrol car, her hands zip-tied behind her back, her face hidden by her hair. The footage ends with the camera still pointed at the center of the lawn, where the gun and the book remain undisturbed in the grass. Mona Lisa was charged. She pleaded guilty to second-degree manslaughter. Their daughter was 3 years old when it happened. There is no version of that night where Pedro doesn't hold the book tighter and believe harder, and that's the part that doesn't leave you. The next clip has no weapon, no stunt, no plan that went wrong, just a car, a road, and a speed that left no room for anything to go right. The camera is shaky, held by 21-year-old Michael Owen in the passenger seat. The interior of the car is dark, lit only by the glowing needles of the dashboard and the occasional flash of a passing street lamp. 20-year-old Kyle Kierford is behind the wheel, his hands gripping the steering wheel as the engine roars. A high-pitched whine that fills the small cabin. They're laughing. Michael pans the phone camera toward Kyle, then out the side window where the Sussex countryside is nothing more than a black blur, streaking past at 90 miles per hour. "Slow down, bruv," Michael says, but he's still chuckling. Kyle doesn't slow down. Instead, the sound of the engine climbs higher. The road begins to wind. The steering wheel jerks in Kyle's hands as he fights to keep the car centered in the narrow lane. The tires chirp a sharp, brief screech every time they hit a bend. Michael holds the phone tighter, the footage swaying violently as the lateral G-forces pull them toward the door panels. The laughter is shorter now, replaced by quick, sharp intakes of breath. Kyle is leaning forward, his chest almost touching the wheel, his movements becoming jerky and overcorrected. He's sawing at the wheel to stay on the asphalt. They hit a long, straight stretch. The speedometer needle continues its clockwise crawl. Michael turns the camera back to himself, his face illuminated by the phone screen, his expression a mix of adrenaline and a sudden, quiet tension. He looks back at the road. The headlights cut a thin, bouncing path through the dark, illuminating the thick trunks of trees that line the shoulder like a tunnel. The car hits another bump, and this time the tires don't just chirp, they slide. You can hear the sound of gravel spraying against the undercarriage, a loud, frantic rattling. Kyle yanks the wheel to the left. The car swerves, the weight shifting too fast for the tires to hold. The music is still playing, but the shouting has stopped. There is only the sound of the engine and the sudden heavy alert to the chassis. The headlights swing wildly across the grass, then up toward the canopy of the trees. The camera catches a flash of a massive trunk dead ahead. Kyle's arms are locked, his body bracing against the seat. Michael lets out a single sharp sound, then the noise, a deafening, wet crunch of metal folding in on itself. The sound of glass shattering into thousands of pieces, raining down at the plastic trim. The camera tumbles, spinning through the air, catching distorted flashes of the roof collapsing and the dashboard being shoved backward. Then absolute silence. The music is cut out. The engine is dead. The only sound is the ticking of cooling metal and the wind moving through the shattered windshield. The phone has landed face up on the grass a few feet from the wreckage, its lens pointed toward the sky. The car is a heap of twisted black metal wrapped around the base of a tree, the steam rising from the radiator into the cold morning air. The recording continues for several minutes. No one moves. No one speaks. The footage shows the light of dawn slowly beginning to bleed into the sky, illuminating the debris scattered across the road. The phone sits in the dirt, still recording the quiet of the Sussex morning until the battery finally dies. Kyle died at the scene. Michael survived with serious injuries. The phone recorded the dawn coming up over the wreckage, the light slowly filling the frame. The car wrapped around a tree in the Sussex countryside. Nobody came for a long time. The surveillance camera shows the hotel pool in Morelia, Michoacan. It's August 2015. The sun is out and the tiled walkways around the water are empty. Jose David Lopez Garcia is standing at the edge of the deep end, wearing dark swim trunks. Beside him is his 3-year-old stepdaughter, Fatima. There is no one else in the frame. The water is a bright, clear blue, perfectly still until Jose reaches down, grabs the girl by her small arms, and throws her into the center of the pool. The girl hits the water with a heavy splash. She isn't wearing floaties. She immediately begins to churn the surface, her arms moving in short, uneven bursts. Her head dips under, then comes back up as she gasps. Jose stays on the concrete, watching. He doesn't move. He doesn't reach out. He doesn't go toward the steps. He waits until she manages to kick her way toward the edge, her small fingers scraping against a slick, wet tile to get a grip. She comes back up, her mouth open, trying to stay above the water, with what little strength she had left. Jose stands at the edge, his shadow stretching across the ripples. When she reaches the tile again, her movements are slow and heavy. She drags herself onto the edge, her chest rising and falling. The cycle repeats. Jose picks her up again and throws her back in. Then again, each time the girl's resistance is lower. She's no longer trying to swim. She's just trying to stay afloat. Her arms move in slow, weak circles. She spends more time under the surface than above it. Jose walks a few steps along the edge, following her position in the water, but his hands remain at his sides. The courtyard stays quiet. The palm trees shift slightly in the background. There is no one else around. The mother is upstairs in the room asleep.
A 3-year-old girl drowned after being thrown repeatedly into a hotel swimming pool in Mexico. Horrifying surveillance video obtained by a Quadratine News TV shows her stepfather throwing her in multiple times. He watches her bob up for air and appears to pull her as she's submerged underwater. According to the time listed in the surveillance video, the two were at the pool for an hour and a half and then returned later. He tossed her into the pool again and then attempted to throw a life preserver at her. Reports say the mom of the daughter was asleep in the hotel while the stepfather took the toddler to the pool. He has been charged with homicide and is currently in prison awaiting a court hearing.
On the final toss, the girl hits the water and doesn't come back up right away. The bubbles from the splash fade, leaving only small ripples moving across the surface. Jose leans forward slightly, looking at the water. A few seconds pass, then 10. The girl's hands break the surface once, fingers spread before slipping back under. She doesn't come up again. Jose doesn't jump in. He doesn't call out. He turns and walks towards the hotel stairs, leaving the pool behind. The camera keeps recording. The water settles. The surface becomes flat again, reflecting the sky and the palm trees. The footage continues for several minutes. The water stays still. Nothing moves. Jose David Lopez Garcia was convicted and sentenced. The pool camera recorded everything, from the first throw to the last. The courtyard stayed quiet. The palm trees moved slightly in the background, and no one came. A security camera shows a treadmill inside the Atlantic Heights Clubhouse gym in New Jersey. It is April 2, 2021. 6-year-old Corey Michiolo is already on the belt, his small sneakers thudding against the black rubber. Standing directly behind the machine is his father, Christopher Greger. The boy is wearing a gray t-shirt and shorts, his arms pumping as he moves. Greger reaches forward and presses the button on the console. The motor whines as the speed increases. Corey's strides lengthen, his legs turning to match the accelerating belt. He is breathing heavily, his chest moving in short, quick bursts as the speed increases. Greger stands over him, his hands resting on the side rails of the machine, watching. He falls. Corey's right foot catches the edge of the belt and his body is swept backward. His chest slams into the black rubber as the machine continues to move, dragging him along the belt. Gregor doesn't press the stop button. He doesn't move toward the console. Instead, he reaches down, grabs Corey by his shirt in his arms, and hauls him back onto the moving belt. The belt keeps moving. Corey struggles to find his footing. He is struggling to find his footing as the belt continues at the high-speed setting. He tries to run again, but his coordination is gone. He falls a second time. As he is swept toward the back of the machine, his head dips near the moving belt. Gregor again reaches down, grips his son, and shoves him back toward the front of the machine. His mouth is open as he gasps. Gregory is seen leaning toward Corey, his face inches from the boy's ear. He is speaking, his mouth moving as he continues to push the child forward. Corey's shoulders are shaking as he tries to maintain his balance. Gregor reaches for the console again. He increases the incline. The front of the treadmill rises, forcing Corey to run uphill while the speed remains unchanged. No one else is there. Corey's feet are slipping. He is losing the rhythm of the machine. His sneakers squeak against the belt as he tries to find traction. Gregor reaches down one more time. He appears to bite the top of Corey's head. The boy flinches, his body jerking as he continues to move. He falls again, his knees hitting the rubber. Every time he is swept to the back, Gregor is there, grabbing him and forcing him back on. The gym is quiet. The treadmill keeps moving. Corey trying to stay on the belt. Corey eventually manages to stay upright for a few more seconds, his movements slow and heavy. His legs move in a mechanical, repeated cycle as the rubber belt pulls beneath him. Gregor eventually presses the button. The machine slows down and the incline levels out. Corey stops. He doesn't move. He stands on the non-moving belt for a moment, his head hanging low toward his chest. His hands are resting on the plastic frame of the machine, his small body trembling. The following morning, Corey woke up in his mother's home. He was lethargic. He began to vomit. By the time he reached the hospital, his speech was slurred and his breathing was labored. During the examination, doctors discovered deep bruising and internal injuries to his heart and liver. He suffered a seizure on the examination table. Medical staff performed emergency measures for over an hour. Corey died on the table. An autopsy confirmed the cause of death as blunt force trauma. The treadmill footage from the Atlantic Heights gym was recovered by investigators and used as evidence in the trial. Christopher Gregor was arrested and charged. In 2024, a jury found him guilty of aggravated manslaughter and child endangerment. Corey's mother was present in the courtroom for the verdict. The gym at Atlantic Heights remains in operation. The treadmill is still in the same corner of the room. The video is the only record of that hour. Christopher Gregor was convicted of aggravated manslaughter. The treadmill is still in that corner of the gym. The video is the only record of that hour, and it was enough. Every clip in this video was recorded by something, a camera that had no opinion about what it was capturing, no ability to intervene, no way to stop what was happening in front of its lens. The next one was recorded live by the person driving, for an audience that watched it happen in real time. The screen is already live. The camera faces inward, dashboard visible at the bottom of the frame, late afternoon light coming through the windshield behind it. Music is playing, loud enough to distort slightly on the microphone, the kind of distortion that happens when a phone speaker is too close to its own lens. Two girls are visible. The one driving has one hand on the wheel. The other hand isn't on the wheel. She's moving with the music, shoulders shifting, head tilting, glancing sideways at the phone propped somewhere on the dash. The girl in the passenger seat is younger. She's laughing at something just off frame. The road outside is rural, flat, the kind of road with nothing on either side to slow for. The stream has viewers. The comment count is ticking. Nothing about the first few minutes look like anything other than what it is. Two girls in a car, one of them performing for the camera, music too loud, the other one along for it. The driver sings a line from whatever is playing. She glances at the road, then back at the phone. She glances at the road, then back at the phone. The motion is easy, automatic, the way people do things they've done 100 times without consequence. The car stays in the lane. The comments keep coming. She laughs at something someone typed and tilts the camera slightly toward herself to respond to it. The frame pulling away from the windshield, the road disappearing from view for a moment that stretches just slightly longer than it should. Then the frame lurches. Not a cut, not a transition. The camera is still live when the car goes. The image tilts hard to the right, then the audio collapses into a single sharp concussive sound, and then there is noise that doesn't have a clean description. Impact and roll and the crunch of the fence, and then something that might be the car coming to rest or might be the phone hitting the interior of the door. The frame is sideways. The light through the window is different now, lower angled, the sky visible where the road used to be, then stillness. The stream is still running when the camera moves again. Someone is holding it now. The frame is shaking with the breathing of whoever is carrying it. Fast, shallow. The kind of breathing that happens before the body is caught up with what just occurred. The footage shows the exterior of the car, crumpled along the driver's side, resting in a field. The barbed wire fence is visible at the edge of the frame, a gap torn through it where the car came through. The ground is dry. There are tire marks cut into it leading from the road. The camera keeps moving. It finds Jacqueline. The frame holds there. It shouldn't, but it does. The stream is still live and the camera is pointing at her, and the person holding the phone is making sound, crying, words breaking apart before they finish.
I killed my sister, okay? I know I'm going to jail for life, alright? I understand that. This is the last thing I wanted to happen, okay? Alright? I don't care though. I'ma hold it down.
The viewers watching in real time are typing into the comment box, and some of them are telling themselves it's staged, and some of them already know it isn't, and none of them can do anything from where they are. Abdulia's voice comes through the audio. She's talking to the camera. She says her sister is dead. She says it more than once. She says she did this. The words come out between breaths that don't fully complete. The phone is still up. The stream is still running. She keeps filming. Viewers watching live start screaming into the comments. Some of them are trying to find out where the road is, what county, what route. Some of them are already calling 911 from different states, different time zones, trying to describe a crash site they've never seen, except through a shaking phone screen. The comment section is moving too fast to read. Someone posts the name of the road. Someone else posts it again. The stream stays live while this happens. While strangers on the internet attempt to locate a girl lying in a field in Merced County, California through the pixelated footage of her sister's phone, a dispatcher receives the location. Units are sent. By the time they reach the field, Jacqueline Sanchez is already gone. Investigators pull the stream from Instagram servers. They watch it on a monitor from the beginning. The music, the laughing, the hand coming off the wheel. They watch the driver's eyes move from the road to the phone and back. And each time they do, the frame drifts with her. The windshield sliding out of shot. The road gone from the recording entirely for 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The audio still carrying the music as if nothing is different. They watch the frame tilt when she reaches for something. They watch the moment the car goes and the audio collapses. Toxicology comes back. Alcohol in her system. None of the passengers were wearing seatbelts. Not the driver, not Jacqueline in the passenger seat, not the 14-year-old in the back who survived with severe injuries. Investigators document the timeline, when the stream started, when the crash occurred, how long the camera kept running afterward. The stream ran for several minutes after the car stopped moving. Abdulia Sanchez is arrested and charged. Vehicular manslaughter while intoxicated, DUI causing injury, child endangerment. The trial runs the following year. The jury watches the footage on a screen at the front of the courtroom. They watch the music and the dancing. They watch the moment she tilts the camera toward herself to read a comment, the windshield emptying out behind her, the road gone from the frame. They watch the lurch. They watch the feel. In February 2018, the verdict comes back guilty on multiple charges. Later that year, the sentence, more than 6 years in state prison. Jacqueline Sanchez was 14 years old. Her family had been planning her quinceañera, the celebration for her 15th birthday, weeks away. The invitations had not yet been sent. The Instagram stream had been live for less than 10 minutes. The footage still exists. The first few minutes are the hardest to watch, not because of what happens in them, but because of what doesn't. The road is clear, the music is loud, the girl in the passenger seat is laughing at something just off frame. The comment count was still ticking when the car went off the road. Strangers were calling 911 from different states, trying to describe a crash site they'd only seen through a phone screen. Jacqueline Sanchez was 14 years old. Her quinceañera invitations had not been sent. What comes next in front of a crowd too, not online, but on a platform above a valley in Sichuan, where a man stepped off the edge before the equipment was ready. The camera shakes, pointed over the edge of a metal platform in Sichuan. It's May 2025. You can hear the wind whistling through the girders and the distant muffled chatter of tourists standing behind the safety railing. A man is standing at the very precipice, his toes hanging over the void. He is wearing a red t-shirt that flutters in the breeze. A bungee cord is visible, looped near his feet, but it lies slack on the diamond plate floor. One of the jump masters is reaching toward the man's harness, his hands moving quickly over the clips. The man is looking straight ahead at the horizon, his chest rising and falling in shallow, rapid bursts. He shifts his weight from one foot to the other. He is leaning forward, his center of gravity already tipping toward the open air. The staff member hasn't stepped back yet. He is still fumbling with a secondary line, his fingers struggling with a carabiner that won't seem to seat. The man doesn't wait for a count. He doesn't look back for a signal. He lunges forward. His body leaves the platform in a clean horizontal dive. For the first 2 seconds, the footage shows him silhouetted against the bright sky, arms spread wide. Then the perspective shifts. The camera pans down to follow him. The thick black bungee cord, which should be uncoiling and beginning to tension, is trailing behind him like a loose thread. It isn't catching. There is no snap, no recoil, and no resistance. The tourists on the platform go silent. The man continues to shrink in size as he moves toward the valley floor. He is still in a diving posture, but his limbs begin to flail as a realization of the unbroken freefall sets in. He is clawing at the air, his body twisting as he tries to find some kind of leverage. The cord behind him remains limp, falling at the same velocity as his body. It is not attached to the primary anchor. The staff member on the platform is frozen, his hands still outstretched toward the empty space where the man was standing a second ago. He is looking down, his mouth open, but no sound comes out. The wind continues to howl through the metal structure. The man hits the surface of the water or the ground below. It's difficult to tell from the height. With a heavy distant thud that carries back up to the platform, there is a small splash, then nothing. The bungee cord finally reaches its full length, but it just hangs there, swaying in the wind, completely unburdened. It hasn't stretched at all. The camera remains fixed on the empty cord for several seconds. The tourists behind the railing begin to back away, their footsteps heavy and frantic on the metal floor. Someone starts to shout, but the wind swallows the words. The jump master slowly retracts his hand and grips the railing, his knuckles turning white as he stares into the valley. The footage continues for another minute. The bungee cord continues to sway, a long black line cutting through the frame against the green of the trees below. There is no movement from the bottom of the canyon. The scene remains perfectly still except for the mechanical swinging of the unweighted rope. The cord swayed in the wind for several minutes after. The jump master never moved from the railing. That footage ends with the valley still and the rope hanging slack against the green of the trees. Heights take people in different ways. The next clip wasn't a jump, wasn't a stunt, wasn't anything planned. It was a single misplaced step on wet rock beside a waterfall in India, and the phone fell with her. The camera is shaking as Anvi Kandar adjusts the lens, her face illuminated by the gray light of a misty morning. It's July 16, 2024. Behind her, the Kumbe waterfall, is a thundering wall of white water. The sound so loud it vibrates through the microphone. The air is thick with spray, coating everything in a fine, slick layer of moisture. Anvi is standing on a narrow ledge of dark volcanic rock. She takes a small step back, her boots scuffing against the wet stone, trying to frame the drop of the falls behind her. She's looking into the screen of her phone, not at her feet. She shifts her weight to the left, her heel catching on a patch of moss. Her ankle twists. The camera tilts violently as she lets out a sharp, cut-off gasp. Her hand reaches out, fingers clawing at the empty air, searching for a handhold on the smooth, wet cliffside. There is a sickening sound of rubber sliding against stone, and then she is gone from the frame. The phone falls with her, the footage spinning in a fast blur of green foliage, gray rock and white mist. mist. There is a sound of a heavy impact, then another, as a device tumbles down the ravine. The recording continues even after the phone wedges into a crevice at the bottom, the lens pointed at a cluster of ferns. The only sound is a muffled roar of the waterfall and the steady drip of water hitting the lens. High above, faint shouting begins. Voices call out her name, but they are thin and far away, swallowed by the density of the forest. There is no response from the bottom of the gorge. The camera stays fixed on the ferns, their fronds heavy with water, swaying slightly in the wind created by the falls. The light at the bottom of the ravine begins to dim as the sun moves behind the ridge. Suddenly, the sound of snapping branches and sliding scree grows louder. Metal carabiners clink against rock. A second rescuer follows, their headlamp cutting through the shadows and flashing across the lens. One of the rescuers reaches the bottom and moves toward a slumped shape partially hidden by the undergrowth, just out of the main focus of the camera. She's breathing, he shouts back up toward the rim. We need to stretch her now, secure the line. The footage captures the rhythmic, heavy breathing of the men and the constant and changing sound of the water. There is a mechanical clattering as a metal basket is lowered into the frame, hitting the rocks with a sharp clang. The rescuers struggle with the slick terrain, their feet slipping as they shift their weight to lift the stretcher. Watch the head, easy, pull the slack. The light from the headlamps sweeps back and forth across the ferns. The sound of the rescuer's boots retreating through the brush grows fainter as they move toward the main ascent line. A radio crackles with static, a voice on the other end asking for a status update, but the reply is lost to the sound of the waterfall. The camera remains in the crevice undisturbed. The red and blue lights of an ambulance reflect faintly off the high mist above the canyon rim before disappearing. The footage continues to record the dark forest floor. The only sound left is a constant, heavy drone of the Kumbe waterfall and the occasional drip of moisture onto the microphone. Anvi survived. The rescuers found her breathing at the bottom of the ravine, and the footage of them getting her out is the same recording as the fall. Not every clip in this video ends that way. The next one doesn't. It goes to a place most divers won't follow. 400 feet straight down into a sinkhole in the Red Sea, and the camera mounted to Yuri Lipsky's helmet recorded every foot of the descent. The Blue Hole, a massive underwater sinkhole in Dahab, Egypt, is often referred to as a diver's cemetery. It is a 400-foot deep vertical drop that has claimed the lives of between 130 and 200 divers in the last decade alone. Despite its reputation, 32-year-old Russian diving instructor Yuri Lipsky arrived at the site on April 28, 2000, determined to reach the bottom. He had spent the morning asking local technical divers to accompany him, but every experienced diver he spoke to refused. They pointed to the lack of specialized equipment and the weeks of decompression planning required for such a descent. Yuri had been in Dahab for only 2 days. He decided to proceed alone. Before entering the water, Yuri prepared his gear on the shore. He was using a single 12-liter tank of compressed air, the kind typically used for shallow recreational swims. He lacked the redundant gas cylinders and the specific trimix, a blend of helium, nitrogen, and oxygen necessary for deep-sea diving to prevent the onset of nitrogen narcosis. He strapped a video camera to his helmet, checked his lead-weight belt, and stepped into the water at 5 p.m. Witnesses on the surface watched as he adjusted his mask and began a rapid vertical descent toward the dark center of the sinkhole. The camera is already submerged, the lens cutting through the crystalline surface of the Red Sea. Yuri Lipsky is a few feet below the surface, his fins kicking in a slow, steady rhythm. The sun is low, sending long, shimmering shafts of light through the water that illuminate the jagged edges of the Blue Hole's coral rim. Ahead, the reef drops away into a deep circular void of dark indigo. Yuri checks his wrist-mounted computer. He is descending along the vertical wall of the sinkhole. The footage is steady at first, capturing the vibrant colors of the reef as they begin to mute. The reds and yellows fade into a uniform heavy blue. He passes 30 feet, then 60. The light from the surface is becoming a distant, flickering ceiling. At 90 feet, the silence of the deep becomes absolute, broken only by the mechanical sound of his own breathing. As the depth increases, his reaction time slows. The camera tilts slightly to the left and lingers there for several seconds before he corrects the angle. His fin kicks become less rhythmic, occasionally stuttering as he drifts closer to the jagged coral of the wall. The sound of his regulator becomes a heavy labored cadence, the pauses between each breath growing slightly longer as the gas density increases. He reaches for his buoyancy controls with a hesitant sweeping motion, his fingers brushing against the valves several times before finding a grip. As he reaches 130 feet, the absolute safety limit for recreational diving, the environment shifts. The water is no longer clear. It is a cold, dark teal. Yuri's movements change. His hands, which were steady, start to fumble with the controls of his buoyancy compensator. He is trying to add air to his vest to slow his descent, but the thudding sound of his fins hitting the reef wall suggests he is losing orientation. The nitrogen in his system is beginning to take effect, clouding his judgment. He pans the camera left, then right, but there are no reference points. Only the endless vertical cliff in the dark water. He is breathing heavily. The sound of his regulator, a mechanical hiss-clunk, is loud in the underwater silence. Every time he exhales, a cloud of silver bubbles rushes past the lens, obscuring the view for a second before clearing to show the abyss below. He isn't stopping to check his buoyancy. He is tilted forward, his heavy lead weight belt loaded with 26 pounds of lead, pulling his center of gravity down. He is falling faster than he is swimming. He passes 200 feet, then 250. The pressure is mounting, crushing the air inside his lungs and his gear. At this depth, the air he is breathing is thick, and the effort to pull it into his lungs is becoming visible in the frantic rhythm of the bubbles. His descent speed increases noticeably as the air in his vest compresses further under the weight of the water column. He is no longer upright. His body is tilted into a steep head-down angle, and he makes 3 rapid, urgent stabs at the inflation button. Each time, there is no visible change in his velocity. His hands move in wide, jerky arcs as he tries to locate his secondary air source, but his fingers slide off the equipment without securing it. The reef wall streaks past the lens in a vertical blur of gray and brown. Suddenly, the camera jerks. There is a muffled, tearing sound. The buoyancy vest has ruptured under the extreme pressure of the depth. The bubbles are no longer coming just from his regulator. They are streaming from the fabric of his gear. Yuri begins to plummet. The footage becomes a chaotic blur of bubbles and dark water. The camera pans upward for a split second, showing the surface as a tiny, unreachable pinprick of light. Then he is looking down. The bottom of the sinkhole is rushing up to meet him. It isn't a soft landing. The camera slams into the silt at 302 feet. A cloud of fine-gray dust explodes into the frame, turning everything opaque. Yuri is face down on the floor of the blue hole. You can hear his breathing, short, desperate gasps that sound like a whistle for the regulator. He tries to push himself up, his hands appearing in the frame, clawing at the sand. He manages to turn his head, the camera catching the edge of his mask. He is trying to find the arch, the underwater tunnel that leads to the open sea, but he is too deep. He is trapped in the basin. His movements slow down. The frantic gasps become longer, spaced further apart. He reaches for his pressure gauge, but his arm falls back into the silt. The dust begins to settle around the lens, coating it in a thin gray layer. The breathing stops. The only sound left is the faint rhythmic ticking of the camera's internal motor. The lens remains pointed at the gray silt and a few scattered rocks. The water is perfectly still. Minutes pass. The light from the distant surface fades as the sun sets above the Egyptian coast, leaving the camera to record a black frame in the silence of the basin. 1 week later, on May 5th, a local technical diver named Tariq Omar reached the bottom. He had been contacted by Yuri's mother after his son failed to return to his hotel. Omar found the body lying motionless in the silt. Attached to the helmet was the camera. Yuri was positioned face down, exactly as the footage had ended, with his lead belt still securely fastened and his tank empty. The gear was heavily encrusted with silt, and the internal components of his vest were shredded from the earlier rupture. The basin was completely still, the fine dust having settled back into a flat, undisturbed floor around the body. Today, the entrance to the blue hole is lined with small stone memorials and plaques. They are bolted to the rock face, overlooking the water left by the families of those who never surfaced. Among them is a plaque for Yuri Lipsky. The sinkhole remains a popular destination for tourists and divers, but the basin at 300 feet remains largely undisturbed, marked only by the silt and the quiet of the deep water. Tariq Omar reached the bottom of the blue hole a week later. He found the camera still attached to the helmet, the body exactly where the footage had ended. The basin at 300 feet is largely undisturbed. The silt settled back around it the same way it settled around everything else down there. Heights take things and keep them. The next clip was recorded from inside a car on a freeway in Cape Town. The speedometer pinned past 300 kilometers per hour, and the footage doesn't end the way anyone in that vehicle expected it to. The camera is fixed on the glowing needle of the speedometer. It is pinned at the far right of the dial, trembling against the 310 mark. Outside the windshield, the N1 freeway in Cape Town is a tunnel of white lines and overhead lights. The wind sounds against the glass, a high-pitched whistle that covers the sound of the engine. In the passenger seat, a hand holds a phone. The footage shakes as the car hits an expansion joint in the asphalt. The chassis jars, a mechanical thud that moves through the frame. The driver reaches for the gear lever, but the car hits a crest in the road. The tires lose full contact. The driver moves the wheel to the right. The car rotates. The sound of the tires becomes a continuous wail as the vehicle slides sideways at over 190 miles per hour.
Nee, zo zie je niet meer doen, man. Yo. Is dat een fucking BM? Ja, hij is M3. Hij is M3. Ja, we dan
The footage from the passenger's phone shows the interior spinning. The dashboard lights tilt at a 45-degree angle. The concrete median moves into the frame, a gray wall lit by the headlights. There is a sharp intake of breath from the passenger. The car hits the barrier. It's a sequence of tearing metal and glass. The frame collapses. The phone is pulled from the passenger's hand. The camera spinning through deploying airbags and plastic trim. The footage goes dark, but the audio continues. It's the sound of metal scraping against concrete for several seconds. The wreckage grinds to a halt. The next clip is lit by blue and red strobes. The car is a heap of twisted alloy and shredded rubber. People stand back, their phones recording the steam rising from the engine block. final video is shot from a few inches away. It's dark, lit by a flashlight beam. The interior of the car has been pushed forward. A section of the door frame has been forced through the roof into the cabin. The driver is in a seat, his head against the headrest, pinned by a piece of structural steel. He is moving. His hands move against his chest, and he is making a wet, rhythmic sound with every breath. A flashlight moves through the shattered window. Hands move around the metal. There is shouting, but the driver does not respond. He continues to make the same sound. The camera pans across the dashboard where the speedometer needle is stuck at the 312 mark. The driver remains in his seat, eyes open. A mechanical whine starts in the background. The footage ends with the sound of metal being cut. The driver survived, pinned in the seat. The speedometer needle stuck at 312. The sound of the cutting equipment is the last thing on that recording. The camera's already on him. He's standing at the edge of the water, shoes still on, hands at his sides. The frame is loose, held casually, the horizon tilting slightly as the person behind the lens shifts their weight. There is ambient sound, wind off the water, something that might be distant voices further down the bank. The man near the water isn't looking at the camera. He's looking at the surface in front of him, and then he steps in. The water comes up to his shins.
चालू तो हो गई इधर का कैमरा दिखेगा तुम्हें इसके अंदर ठीक है
The person filming doesn't move closer. The frame stays where it is, wide enough to show the man from the waist up, the water dark around his legs. He takes another step. The bottom drops faster than his body expected. You can see it in the way his shoulders rise, the small involuntary adjustment people make when the ground does something different than they anticipated. He steadies. He's still upright. The camera holds. For a few seconds, nothing about this looks like anything. From this angle, from this distance, it still almost looks like someone swimming, like someone who meant to do this. But the rhythm is wrong. The strokes aren't pulling him anywhere. His head is tilting back at the wrong angle, mouth working upward, trying to keep the surface close. His arms are moving too fast and achieving too little. That specific expenditure of energy that goes nowhere, burning everything to stay in place. The water around him isn't rough. There's no current visible in the frame. The surface is flat and gray and entirely indifferent to what is happening inside. The camera keeps rolling.
अरे क्या हुआ अरे कोई हेलो 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 और नाव लेके आना
He goes under once and comes back up. When he surfaces, the movement is harder. His head clears the water and there's a sound on the audio. Not a word, not a shout. Something shorter and wetter than either of those things. The sound a person makes when their mouth finds air for less than a full second before the water comes back. His arms are still moving. They're moving slower now. The person filming takes a step. The frame jostles, the horizon tilting as the camera shifts, and for a moment the image loses him entirely. Just water and bank, and the edge of the frame catching the ground. Before steadying again, he's still visible, still up. The step forward is the last movement the camera operator makes toward the water. There is no shouting on the audio. There are no other voices. There is wind and there is the faint ambient sound of whatever this is. And there is the sound of the water, which is constant and unremarkable. The same sound it made when he first stepped in. He goes under again. He comes back up one more time. Less of him this time. The water is at his chin before his arms find a stroke, and the stroke barely lifts him. His head tilts all the way back, face aimed straight up, and from this angle you can see his mouth open and his eyes are open. open and he's looking at the sky or at nothing, or at whatever a person looks at when everything else is going. The effort in his arms is still there. It's purely mechanical now. The body doing what it does when the mind has already run out of options. The camera doesn't move. The water comes up over his face. His arms stay visible for a moment after his head goes under, still moving, slower, rising slightly above the surface before pulling back down, and then they stop, and the water closes over the space where he was, and the surface settles, and the only thing in the frame is the water in the far bank and the sound of the wind. The camera keeps rolling. It records the surface for a long time after he disappears, long enough that the audio captures the ambient sound of the location, whatever birds are present, whatever movement exists further down the bank, the water itself continuing its small surface noise as if nothing has changed in it. The frame doesn't move toward the spot where he went under. It doesn't move away from it. It just holds. At some point, the clip ends. There is no rescue in the footage. There is no moment where the frame drops and the audio fills with splashing, with someone going in, with the sound of a body being pulled back to the surface. The water stays flat. The far bank stays still. Whatever existed in the space between the man stepping in and the camera finally stopping is recorded in full, every second of it, and none of it changes the outcome. The last frame is water. The surface is flat. It doesn't come back up. The camera operator took one step toward the water and stopped. That step is still in footage. The horizon tilts, the frame loses him for a moment, and then it steadies again from the same distance. What followed that stillness is recorded in full. The next clip also turns on a single decision made in a fraction of a second, a different kind of stillness, a different kind of distance, and consequences that are still being argued in courts. The body cam footage is shaky, the lens catching the edge of Deputy Lorenzo Lugan's high-visibility vest as he leans toward the driver's side window of a stopped sedan. It's February 2018. The driver, 28-year-old Brent Thompson, sits with his hands on the wheel, looking straight ahead. The deputy's gloved hand holds a clipboard. He leans in. "Why didn't you just give me your real name?" Lugan asks. Thompson does not look at him. His jaw is tight. He doesn't say anything. His left hand moves toward the door handle. The car door swings open, hitting the deputy's hip. Thompson lunges out of the seat. He is in a full sprint before his feet hit the gravel shoulder.
Did you give me the right name?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Jacob Todd Jones.
Okay. Why don't you give me the right name?
It is the right name.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Brent, I know. So right now you're under arrest for... Can I say something? Stop being tased! Stop!
"Stop, police," Lugan shouts. The sound of the deputy's duty belt jingles as he begins to run. Thompson is several yards ahead, his sneakers hitting the dust. He doesn't look back. He moves away from the parked cars and toward a tall concrete highway barrier that separates the local road from the multi-lane interstate. Lugan is breathing heavily, the sound loud against the microphone. He reaches for his belt while moving, his fingers moving toward the holster of his taser. He pulls the weapon, his arm extending as he moves. "Stop or you're gonna get tased," Lugan yells. Thompson reaches the concrete barrier. He places both hands on the top of the ledge and hoists himself up. His body is silhouetted against the sky as he clears the top. On the other side, the sound of the interstate is a continuous roar of tires and wind. Thompson drops onto the other side of the barrier, landing on a narrow strip of asphalt. He stumbles, his momentum carrying him toward the first lane of traffic. Lugan reaches the barrier and looks over. He sees Thompson upright again, starting to move across the active lanes. Lugan pulls the trigger. The taser probes fire, the thin wires trailing through the air. They catch Thompson in the back. His entire body goes rigid. His arms lock at his sides, and his legs stop moving. He tips forward, falling face first onto the dark pavement of the fast lane. Thompson is on the ground, his body unmoving. He doesn't roll or crawl. The SUV's tires smoke as they slide, the vehicle fishtailing as the driver swerves. The impact is a heavy metallic thud. Thompson's body is obscured by the front bumper of the SUV. The vehicle continues to slide for another 20 yards before the driver corrects the steering. The horn stops. The SUV does not pull over. It accelerates, its taillights shrinking as it moves further down the interstate. Lugan remains on the barrier. He is looking at the spot in the lane where the SUV made contact. The interstate continues to flow, the sound of other cars constant. Lugan climbs back down onto the local roadside of the barrier. He reaches for his radio, his hand moving toward the mic. "Dispatched," he says, his voice unsteady. "I need a medic. Lane 1. Vehicle versus pedestrian." The body cam continues to record as Lugan walks back toward his patrol car. He stops and rests his forehead against the roof of the vehicle. The interstate traffic continues on the other side of the wall, the sound of tires passing over the pavement repeating in a steady loop. The footage ends with the blue and red lights of the patrol car reflecting off the concrete barrier. Brent Thompson died on the interstate. Deputy Lugan stood with his forehead against the roof of his patrol car while the traffic kept moving on the other side of the wall. The body cam kept recording. Most of the footage in this video captures a moment, fast, sudden, in a few seconds that changes everything. The dash cam is already running. The frame shows Highway 70 through the windshield of a vehicle traveling behind the bus, a 2-lane rural road, tree lines on both sides. The morning light flat and even across the asphalt. The school bus is visible ahead, yellow, moving at a steady pace. The kind of ordinary image that registers as background and nothing more. The road ahead is clear. The lane markings are clean. There is nothing in the frame that asks for a second look. The bus moves forward. The vehicle behind it follows at a normal distance. The audio picks up road noise, the low vibration of an engine, wind against the windshield. Somewhere inside that bus are 24 8th graders who spent weeks building an electric race car and are an hour from getting to race it. None of that is visible from here. From here, it's just a yellow bus on a rural highway on a clear morning.
Oh my god! Oh my god! God! Okay, I'll spin.
Then the bus drifts, not sharply. It moves toward the center line the way a vehicle moves when the hand on the wheel has gone slack. A gradual lean with no correction behind it. The dash cam captures it in full. The bus crossing the yellow line, the nose of it entering the oncoming lane, the pace of it unchanged. No braking, no swerve back. Just a steady forward motion that is now happening in the wrong lane. The correction doesn't come. The frame catches the dump truck a half second before impact. A Tennessee Department of Transportation vehicle coming the other direction, full-sized in its own lane, with no time and no space and nowhere to go. The collision happens in the center of the frame. The audio distorts from the impact, a compression of sound that the microphone isn't built to capture cleanly, and the image shakes as the shockwave reaches the following vehicle. The dashcam jostling on its mount. The bus is pushed forward. It strikes the Chevrolet Trailblazer that had been behind the dump truck. Then it leaves the road entirely, the rear end swinging wide, the whole vehicle moving sideways off the asphalt before it comes to rest against a tree at the roadside. The dashcam keeps recording. The road ahead is suddenly still. The dump truck has stopped. The Trailblazer has stopped. The bus is against the tree at an angle, its hazard lights not on. No movement visible through the windows from the distance. The audio has returned to road noise and wind, the same sounds as before, as if the recording hasn't registered what just happened. The people who had been following the bus, parents who knew where it was going, who knew what their kids had built, who had maybe planned to watch the race, are out of their vehicles before the dust settles. The dashcam catches figures moving past it toward the bus, running on the gravel shoulder. Someone's jacket catching the edge of the frame as they pass. They reach the bus door. They are pulling it open. Teachers are already at the windows. There are no seat belts on this bus. The students were thrown forward on impact. Inside, in the footage that comes later from phones and from emergency responders, the seats are in disarray. Bags and jackets scattered across the aisle, and the students who can move are moving, and some of them aren't. Zoe Davis is 13 years old. Ariana Pearson is 13 years old. Both of them are at the scene when emergency crews arrive. Neither of them leave with a living. Air transport is called for multiple students. The bus driver, Sabrina Ducksworth, is taken by ambulance. She requires surgery. Bryson Reagan, an 8th grader, is airlifted with multiple broken bones. He's conscious. He will walk again, his doctors say, in approximately 6 weeks. He tells someone that losing his friends is the part that doesn't have a timeline. In the days after, investigators from the Tennessee Highway Patrol and the National Transportation Safety Board begin reviewing everything the cameras captured. The dashcam footage, the frames from bystander phones, whatever the bus itself recorded if it carried any internal system. They are looking at the moment the bus crossed the center line, looking at whether there was any input on the wheel at all, any brake application, any sign in the seconds before impact of a driver still making decisions. Some of the people watching the footage raised the question of a medical event, a sudden incapacitation, something that happened to the driver before the drift began that would explain the absence of correction. That question is still open. The investigation is still running. The parents of Zoe Davis file a lawsuit. It names the driver and the school system. It asks about fatigue. It asks about training. It asks why the bus had no seatbelts, and what the school system knew about that and when they knew it, and whether any of it changed anything about the decision to put 24 8th graders on it that morning for a trip they had spent weeks preparing for. The lawsuit is in its early stages. No outcome has been reached. As of the last information available, one student remains hospitalized at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital. The investigation into why that bus crossed the center line is still running. Some of these recordings capture accidents, equipment failing, decisions going wrong, a second where everything that could line up badly does. There is a legal threshold that separates a perceived threat from a documented one, and in self-defense cases, that distinction carries the full weight of the outcome. Under Tennessee laws in most jurisdictions that recognize the right to use deadly force in self-defense, the standard is not what was actually happening. It is what a reasonable person in that position would have believed was happening. That gap between intent and perception is where the events of February 5th, 2021 in Hermitage, Tennessee fall entirely. Prank culture as a content category has built its audience on the simulation of danger. The format depends on a reaction, fear, confusion, relief, and the more genuine that reaction appears, the more the content performs. What the record consistently fails to reflect is the operational reality behind these productions. The vast majority of viral prank videos involving confrontation, fake weapons, or simulated criminal behavior are prearranged. The subject has consented. The fear response is performed. The distinction between performance and threat exists because both parties understand which one they are inside. When that shared understanding is removed, the format does not produce content. It produces a genuine threat scenario with no mechanism for the target to recognize it as anything else. That is the framework within which the case of Timothy Wilkes needs to be examined. Wilkes, 20 years old, was on the verge of professional certification as an HVAC technician in February 2021. What the record indicates is that he had developed a significant interest in YouTube prank content and had formed an intention to produce his own material, specifically a staged robbery prank in which he would approach strangers with a large butcher knife, capture their reaction, and upload the footage. The format he was attempting to replicate was, by standard industry practice, one that would have required the cooperation and prior knowledge of everyone involved. The record does not establish whether Wilkes was unaware of this or whether he deliberately chose to approach unsuspecting subjects in order to generate a more authentic response. What it does establish is the outcome of that choice. At approximately 9:25 p.m. on February 5th, 2021, Wilkes approached a group of individuals exiting the Urban Air Trampoline Park in Hermitage, Tennessee, running toward them with a butcher knife in his hand. The situation escalated into a legal confrontation within seconds. Among the group was David Starnes Jr., 23 years old, who was lawfully carrying a concealed firearm. What the record indicates is that Starnes had no information available to him that would have distinguished this approach from an actual armed attack. Starnes drew his firearm and discharged it once. The single shot struck Wilkes, who died at the scene before emergency services arrived. Starnes remained present, cooperated with responding officers, and provided a full account of the events as he had experienced them. From a legal standpoint, the investigating officers and prosecutors applied the self-defense standard as defined under Tennessee law. The legal threshold for self-defense does not require the threat to be real. It requires the belief in that threat to be reasonable given the circumstances available to the person responding. A man running at a group of people with a large knife in a public parking lot at night meets that threshold. Starnes was detained and subsequently released. No charges charges were filed. What the record leaves behind is a case that sits at the intersection of two realities that were never reconciled in the moment they met. Wilkes was operating inside a performance framework that existed entirely in his own understanding of the situation. Starnes was responding to observable facts with no access to that framework. The distinction between performance and threat, the distinction that prank content depends on being clear, was never communicated. Under the law, the outcome followed from that failure directly. Wilkes was 20 years old. His certification was approximately 1 month away. On December 6, 2021, a neighbor's 911 call brought Harris County officers to a residence on Roaston Lane in Texas. The call had come in frantic.
County 911, what is the location of the emergency?
I'm in Glen Lock, and we heard a loud, like 3 pops, bang, bang, bang. So we went outside, and I looked, and I see somebody is laying on their back, and it looks like they've got blood on her chest and blood coming out of her mouth.
What officers found when they arrived needed no further explanation. Patricia Birmingham, 48 years old, was motionless in the driveway. Her husband, Gary Birmingham, 60 years old, was standing a few feet away in the bathrobe. 3 discharged shotgun shells were on the ground around them.
My hands in the air. What else could I do?
Keep him in there. What's going on? Where's the weapon at? Where's the weapon?
I don't know.
Put your hands behind your back for me. Anybody else inside the residence?
No.
Officers detained Carey immediately. He appeared heavily intoxicated and was uncooperative. The scene had already ended. The recording had not.
I need another drink. God damn it. No.
Patricia had been holding her phone throughout the confrontation. That decision to document what was happening to her as it happened would become the evidentiary foundation of the entire case. What the audio reveals is a steady disintegration of safety across a period of nearly 30 minutes before the confrontation moved outside.
Yeah, your grandmother was fat, and that's what you're going to know, because you don't do a goddamn thing to take care of.
Oh my God, we're not going on the fat train now, are we?
Yeah, we'll go.
Are we hopping on the fat train now? What the hell is wrong with you? How did you gain so much weight? You don't look healthy.
You don't even encourage me when I lose weight.
The recording does not begin at the moment of crisis. It begins in a way that many domestic incidents begin, with the familiar architecture of a deteriorating argument, accusations, insults directed in both directions. The cadence of the early portion of the audio is recognizable as a dispute between 2 people who have had versions of this argument before.
You've been doing that for a long time.
No, I haven't. I just felt like it was time for me to do it right now, because you're threatening me and Olivia. Don't touch me. Do not touch me, Carrie Birmingham. I swear to God. Do not touch me. Don't touch me.
You pulled a knife on me.
You do not have the right to touch me. Yeah, go get your gun. Go get your gun, Carrie.
Investigators who reviewed the recording noted that the language in the early minutes did not suggest an isolated incident, but rather a continuation of patterns that had already been documented in other ways.
Fine, I don't give a I really don't. Do what you gotta do. I don't care.
All I have to do is not kill him.
You're a f***ing alcoholic.
You know what? You know what? You called me being an alcoholic.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because you weren't an alcoholic before I met you.
Maybe I should just kill you right now.
Kill me.
Yeah.
Maybe you should. Do it. I'll be sitting right here.
As the recording progresses, the cadence shifts. The accusations become more targeted. The language around the firearm moves from ambient threat to something more specific. Carrie can be heard making statements suggesting that maybe Patricia should be killed. Patricia's responses, audible throughout, do not indicate threat. She remains in the argument, whether that reflects disbelief, refusal to show fear, or a calculated attempt to de-escalate through engagement. The recording does not resolve. What it does document is that the threat level in the audio rises steadily and does not come back down. Friends of Patricia, who later spoke to investigators, confirmed that this was not the first time a firearm had appeared in an argument between them. Multiple individuals told police that Carrie had produced a weapon during confrontations on prior occasions. The evidence revealed a pattern of escalating threats that stretched back before December 6th. a pattern that had never been fully addressed, never resulted in charges, and never produced a protective order. The recording captured the end of that pattern. At some point during the confrontation, Patricia moved outside, phone still recording. The neighborhood CCTV footage documents the same sequence from a different angle. Patricia moving down the street, Carrie following behind her in the bathroom, the distance between them not increasing the way it would if the pursuit had stopped.
Hey, Reese, where'd you get that bag that I gave you? That Christmas bag. Where'd you get it? Huh?
You're embarrassing yourself. You done playing stupid games?
Yeah.
How you shut up? How you shut up? Huh? What?
Last time we were
Huh? You really want this on video?
I'll pull it. I'm mad enough to just pull it.
Your neighbors are gonna see you pointing a gun at me.
Patricia can be heard on the audio noting that neighbors can see him pointing the weapon at her. It was an attempt to invoke the presence of witnesses as a restraint. The footage confirms that witnesses were in fact present, in the sense that cameras were recording. It did not function as a deterrent.
I'm ready to go. Grab the phone.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Okay. All right, goodbye, Reese. You go meet.
Investigators later determined that Carrie had checked the shotgun prior to the shooting to confirm the safety was disengaged and the weapon was ready to fire. That action, deliberate, preparatory, occurring before the moment of the shooting, would become a central point of contention at trial.
Worth it. We're going worth it for you.
Patricia was struck once in the face. She died at the scene. After the shooting, according to investigators, the recording captured Carrie lying down beside her as she was dying. Officers arrived to find him still there.
It sounds like he lays down next to her, and you can hear heavy breathing, and then he moves the phone into the garage area.
Yeah. You guys hope that was worth it. We're going worth it for you. Yeah. You guys
The case went to trial in March 2024. The prosecution's position rested on the totality of the documented evidence. 30 minutes of recorded escalation, CCTV footage of the pursuit, witness testimony establishing prior incidents with a firearm, and the specific detail of the safety being checked before the shooting. The jury was forced to weigh the digital evidence against a specific legal defense, that Carrie Birmingham had not acted with premeditation but had instead committed a crime of passion, an act produced by sudden emotional distress rather than deliberate intent. The crime of passion framework, in Texas and in most jurisdictions that recognize it, operates as a mitigating factor rather than a complete defense. It doesn't require the jury to find the defendant innocent. It requires only that they find the emotional disturbance sufficient in the act sufficiently impulsive to warrant a reduced charge and reduced sentencing range. Applied successfully, it moves a case away from murder in the first degree and toward the lower end of the available sentencing structure. The tension in this particular application was the safety check. Legal analysts noted that the act of verifying a weapon as ready to fire is difficult to reconcile with the spontaneity that the crime of passion framework assumes. Premeditation does not require days of planning. Under Texas law, it can be established in the moments immediately preceding an act. A deliberate check of a firearm's operational status occurring before the shooting is the kind of detail that speaks to intent rather than impulse. The prosecution argued it accordingly. The jury nonetheless accepted the defense framing. Carrie Birmingham was sentenced to 10 years in prison, fined $5,000, and made eligible for parole after 5 years served. The sentence was a product of a legal determination, not an error, but the gap between what the evidence documented and what the sentence reflected produced a response that extended well beyond the courtroom. Olivia Birmingham lost her mother on December 6, 2021. She spoke publicly after the sentencing. What she said was precise. The day her mother died, she lost both of her parents. The man who fired the weapon was not the father she had known. The 10-year sentence, with the possibility of release at 5 years, was not a number that corresponded to what she understood the recordings to have established. Olivia's statement was not a legal argument. It was an accounting of what the verdict meant in terms that the sentencing guidelines do not measure. The affidavit of her mother's friends, the CCTV footage, the audio record, the forensic evidence, and the detail of the safety check are all in the court record. They were presented. They were considered. The jury's determination was made within the boundaries of the law as written and applied. Patricia Birmingham knew she was in danger. The evidence indicates she had known it for some time before December 6th. On that night, she made the decision to document what was happening, to hold the phone, to keep recording, to create a record that could not be disputed. The footage presented in court captured 30 minutes of escalation, a pursuit down a residential street, and the final moments before the shooting. The recording exists in its entirety. The sentence is a matter of public record. Olivia carries both of those things. The driveway on Roaston Lane is still there. When police in Gainesville, Georgia began receiving a wave of urgent calls about a shooting that it allegedly posted on Snapchat, it immediately signaled that this case would not follow the pattern of a routine investigation. What investigators would soon discover was far more disturbing than a typical act of violence. It was a case where the crime itself had been intertwined with a digital audience. Several callers described the same chilling footage. The video, which had begun circulating rapidly online, appeared to show a teenager driving up to a gas station. The camera, held from inside the vehicle, captured a young man sitting outside, unaware of what was about to happen. Without warning, the shooter fired, recording the act in real time before driving away. The footage captured a chilling reality. If authentic, it meant that the suspect had not only committed murder, but had deliberately documented it and shared it for others to see. At that moment, officers did not yet understand that the shooting was not an isolated act. This was only the beginning of a much larger pattern, one that had been quietly unfolding in the weeks leading up to November 2nd.
I just got punched really hard.
Okay, do you know who it was?
No.
It looks like he just wanted some fame out of it, a Snapchat fame or whatever it is.
Weeks earlier, police had responded to a call at a Walmart in Gainesville. A woman reported that she had been attacked inside the store. When officers arrived, they found the victim, a nursing student named Danielle, visibly shaken. She was holding her head, clearly in pain, after being struck by someone she had never seen before.
Where'd the guy go? Did y'all see him? Or?
Nobody has actually seen where he went. Somebody said he went towards the shoe department.
So nobody knows really where he's at.
Looking around.
Okay. All right.
I looked in the store. It's a blonde-haired curly dude, white guy. No one saw him run out the front. I got one of our associates in the back look for each exit on the side. So if he's either still in here or he made a break.
All right. I'd say he probably ran out. Yeah. Hi there.
Hi.
I'm Officer Seabolt.
Hi.
You gonna make it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just like my head.
You're what?
I just got punched really hard.
Okay. Do you know who it was?
No.
You don't know him?
No, not at all. And I don't know anybody that would punch me.
Okay.
I'm a nursing student.
Okay. Where were you when it happened?
Right
there?
Right this spot.
So he come around the corner and just...
I was coming around the corner. He was walking like this. And then but he had his phone up like this. Like he was taking video.
So he didn't say anything or anything?
No,
he just
didn't say anything. And then he just like all of a sudden went boom, like really hard.
Danielle recounted the incident in detail. She had been walking down one of the store aisles when she noticed a young man approaching the corner. What stood out immediately was that he was holding his phone up, as though he was recording something. At first, it may have seemed harmless, perhaps someone filming casually, but what followed was sudden and violent. Without any warning, he swung his fist and punched her directly in the head with full force. What made the encounter even more unsettling was not just the attack itself, but the attacker's behavior afterward. He did not shout, he did not threaten her further, he did not even attempt to flee the scene in a panic. Instead, he remained eerily calm, continuing to hold his phone up as if the entire assault had been staged purely for the camera. There was no emotional reaction, no visible urgency, only the quiet continuation of recording. Police reviewed Walmart's surveillance footage and confirmed Danielle's account. The video showed a man matching her description walking through the aisle moments before she suddenly collapsed. Investigators trying to make sense of the motive considered the possibility that the attack was part of a disturbing online phenomenon known as the knockout game. In these incidents, individuals individuals would randomly assault strangers, filming the act to post online for attention or shock value.
I think it's one of them, I don't know if y'all have seen the YouTube posts going around here lately where the people just walk up to a complete stranger and cold cock them. Yeah. Yep. Evidently he got her good. Like, she was coming down the aisle.
But what investigators didn't realize at the time was that this incident had already been captured and uploaded. The footage had appeared on Snapchat posted by a 19-year-old named Talon Lowry. As detectives began to examine Talon's social media presence, a clearer and more troubling picture began to form. The Walmart assault was not an isolated upload. His account contained a series of videos, each one documenting increasingly reckless and erratic behavior.
What happened? My bad.
The videos revealed the pattern. In some clips, Talon filmed himself littering in public spaces, seemingly going out of his way to create disruption. In others, he displayed aggressive behavior toward people around him, speaking in hostile tones while ensuring the camera captured every moment. There were also instances where he threatened animals while recording, using the footage to provoke reactions. The content did not appear random. It suggested a deliberate attempt to escalate, to push boundaries further with each post.
By the way, you mother. I'll run every single one of your over, you fat black.
The nature of these videos pointed to something deeper. They showed progression, a steady increase in intensity. What may have started as minor acts of disruption evolved into behavior that was more confrontational, more alarming. The pattern suggested someone who was becoming increasingly erratic, someone who was testing limits in pursuit of attention. And then came November 2nd. That evening, multiple 911 calls replaced reporting a shooting at Texaco gas station along State Route 11. The details that emerged would soon connect directly back to the same individual.
Had two people call us and say that they saw a video on Snapchat of a white male by the name of Talon Lowry shot someone sitting on a bench at the Texaco at North Hall.
Someone's been shot, man.
Where at? Where?
We're at the Texaco on State Route 11.
State Route 11.
Hall County.
Texaco.
Yes, sir.
What else is near that Texaco?
There is No Pun Road.
Okay.
And Jim Hood Road.
No pun. Okay.
The dude videoed it on his phone. He was in a burgundy truck.
Okay. Is the guy who got shot still there?
Yes, sir. He's on the ground. I'm on the phone with him right now, ma'am.
All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He's on the ground right now.
All right. Now, what about the guy that left? What kind of vehicle did he leave in?
I don't know. He pulled up, recorded it, pulled the trigger, and then drove off.
The victim was 18-year-old Brian Ramirez, an employee at the gas station. He had been sitting on a wooden bench outside during his break. There was nothing unusual about the moment, no indication of danger, no reason for concern. Then a truck pulled up. What happened next unfolded in seconds. The shooter fired, striking Brian while simultaneously recording the act. The vehicle then sped away, leaving behind a scene of chaos and confusion. When officers arrived, Brian was still alive. He was struggling to breathe as blood spread across the pavement beneath him.
What's your name?
Brian Ramirez.
Brian Ramirez. How old are you?
18.
18.
Yes.
Do you know the person that shot you?
I do not know.
Okay. Did you recognize the truck?
I did not.
Despite the severity of his injuries, he managed to respond to a few questions. He told officers that he did not know the person who had shot him. He had never seen the vehicle before. There was no prior interaction, no conflict, nothing that could explain why he had been targeted. Paramedics rushed Brian to the hospital, but the damage was too severe. The gunshot wound proved fatal. Shortly after arriving, Brian Ramirez died. At the scene, investigators documented the aftermath. Brian's glasses, his name tag, and his wallet were scattered on the ground, all stained with blood. These details painted a stark picture of how sudden and violent the attack had been. Around the same time, more calls began coming in. People reported seeing the Snapchat video of the shooting. This confirmed something critical. The suspect had recorded the murder and shared it online. The digital trail was not just evidence, it was central to the case. Police quickly worked to identify the individual in the video. It did not take long before they confirmed it was Talon Lowry. With this information, deputies located an address connected to him and began preparing to make an arrest.
A possible address off of Highway 17 on Peppermint Drive that our deputies are going to check out.
We're less than 5 minutes out. If you want to, you can go ahead and get in your vehicle and come on out of there. We got a lot of cars going to try to get up in that driveway.
Because witnesses had reported that Talon possessed an AK-47, officers approached the residence with extreme caution. The possibility that he was still armed added a layer of urgency and risk. However, when they arrived, the situation did not escalate. Talon was taken into custody without resistance.
That's it. So the truck is there. Make sure that they know that he has an AK-47. So
Tell them that he's got an AK-47, please, ma'am. Okay,
Do what?
we're letting them know.
Have they got him yet? Have they talked to him yet?
No, they just found the truck just now.
About Hawk County, I've got the Talon Lowry subject detained at this time.
Radius clear 2325.
With the suspect detained, investigators began speaking with people who had known him growing up. Former classmates described him as quiet and socially isolated. Many noted that his behavior had often made others uncomfortable. There was a sense that he struggled to connect with people in typical ways. Some individuals believed that his online activity reflected a deeper need for attention. They described his videos as increasingly strange and disturbing, suggesting that he may have been trying to gain recognition through shock and provocation.
I've never liked Talon. He's always just been weird. And it's not that like because he's quiet, right? Because like we hang out with a bunch of quiet people, but Talon's just always like been too quiet.
Talon's always kind of been a little weird or different than most people, but
what kind of other stuff has Talon put on his Snapchat before?
I think he was trying to seek out attention or something. Because like I don't guess he really had any friends. Like none of my buddies, like we never hung out with him no more like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like he just did doing stupid stuff. Like he put a video on his story of him shooting a cow. Sure y'all seen that?
Mm-hmm.
Shot a cow.
When detectives sat down with Talon, they confronted him with the evidence. Surveillance footage had captured his truck at the gas station. Phone records placed him at the exact location at the time of the shooting, and the Snapchat video itself showed him holding the weapon. Faced with this, Talon admitted that he was the person in the video. Detectives then asked the question that had been at the center of the investigation. Did he know the victim? His answer was direct and deeply unsettling. He did not know him at all. Brian Ramirez had simply been sitting there when Talon decided to pull the trigger.
So what happened at the gas station? So that was you in the video?
Yeah.
With the gun? Mm-hmm. Now, did you have a reason to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know who you were shooting at?
Mm-hmm.
When you shot the gun? What did you see happen?
Didn't fall down.
You saw somebody fall down? Did you know who he was? You didn't know who he was? So you just shot at him because you wanted to, or?
After news of the arrest was made public, Danielle, the victim from the Walmart incident, recognized Talon immediately. She confirmed to investigators that he was the same man who had attacked her weeks earlier. She also shared a detail that added another layer to the case. During the assault, she said he had looked at her with a completely detached expression. It was not anger or panic, it was something else, something that felt as though he was observing rather than interacting, as if she were part of a scenario he was studying. Investigators ultimately concluded that Talon Lowry's actions were part of a growing obsession with recording shocking content for social media. What began as disruptive behavior had escalated into real-world violence. For the Walmart incident, he was charged with battery. For the murder of Brian Ramirez, he faced multiple charges including malice, murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime. Talon later pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. It was diagnosed with schizophrenia. However, prosecutors argued that the evidence told a different story. The videos he had recorded showed planning, awareness, and intent. They suggested that he understood his actions even as they escalated. In February 2023, Talon Lowry was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. He is currently incarcerated at Augusta State Medical Prison. For the family of Brian Ramirez, the impact was permanent. A life was taken without reason, documented in a way that turned a moment of violence into something that could be replayed and shared. What began as a series of online posts had evolved into something far more dangerous. The phone, once a tool for capturing moments, had become a device for recording harm, and in this case, it preserves a senseless act that would leave lasting consequences for everyone involved. The death of Louis Stevenson on October 13, 2024, the Castilla-La Mancha Bridge in Talavera de la Reina, Spain, brought renewed attention to a content category that operates in the space between extreme sport and deliberate illegality. Stevenson, a 24-year-old British national with an established presence on Instagram, had built his following through rooftopping, the practice of ascending unauthorized structures, bridges, and urban infrastructure, to photograph and document the experience from heights that are inaccessible by any sanctioned means. The Castilla-La Mancha Bridge is a stay-cable structure and the tallest bridge in Spain, rising approximately 192 meters, roughly 630 feet, above the ground below. According to local officials in Talavera de la Reina, access to the bridge's structural elements for climbing purposes is explicitly prohibited. The local council had issued warnings regarding unauthorized access to the structure prior to this incident. The climb Stevenson undertook on the morning of October 13th was not illegal activity, and Spanish authorities have been clear about the standing prohibition on such ascents. Stevenson arrived at the bridge that morning with a companion. The two began the ascent together using the service ladder that runs along the bridge's structural framework. The digital legacy left behind suggests this was intended to be a significant entry in its documented climb history, the kind of content that rooftopping accounts build audience around, combining physical achievement with visual documentation at extreme altitude. The incident highlights the inherent risks of content creation at this level, where the margin between a successful post and a fatal outcome can be eliminated by a single lapse in contact with the structure. The authorities are investigating whether environmental factors played a role, whether records indicate damp conditions at the time of the climb, which may have affected grip and footing on the service ladder. What the official record confirms is that before Stevenson reached the platform at the top of the structure, he lost his grip and fell. The distance from the point of the fall to the base of the bridge was consistent with the structure's full height. His companion contacted emergency services immediately. By the time responders reached Stevenson, he had died from the impact. The incident has renewed discussion among Spanish authorities and safety advocates about enforcement around landmark structures that attract rooftoping activity. The Castilla-La Mancha Bridge, by virtue of its height and its status as the tallest bridge in the country, carries a specific profile within that community. The legal warnings on record, combined with the outcome of October 13th, have reinforced the official position that the structure is not accessible for this purpose, and that the consequences of unauthorized climbs are neither theoretical nor remote. Louis Stevenson was 24 years old. The climb was his last documented attempt. Dmitry Nuyansin spent a decade building his reputation as a personal trainer and fitness coach in Russia. Over the years, he trained elite athletes in person, while also growing an online following of more than 40,000 people under the name Dmitry Fit. The most notable aspect of his content was his commitment to practicing what he preached, following the same programs he taught in order to demonstrate their effectiveness firsthand. What he never anticipated was that his commitment would ultimately cost him everything. In September 2025, Dmitry announced a challenge in which he would deliberately gain at least 55 pounds, roughly 25 kilograms, and then lose it all using his own training and dietary methods. He also offered a roughly $100 reward to any viewer who could lose 10% of their body weight by the end of 2025. In a post promoting the challenge, he wrote that his weight loss course was starting soon, that viewers could win prizes, build a better body, learn how to eat, and have fun doing it. The response from his audience was positive and the challenge got underway. The gaining phase presented a significant obstacle. Adding more than 50 pounds in a short period of time was not going to happen through normal eating. To stay on track with his own challenge, Dmitry put himself on a diet of over 10,000 calories a day, more than 3 times the 2,500 to 3,000 calories a man of his build would typically need just to maintain his weight. He posted videos eating large quantities of calorie-dense foods high in sugar and fat, documenting the process for his followers. The approach worked as intended. By November 18th, he weighed 230 pounds and was rapidly closing in on his target. Just a few days after posting that update, things changed. Friends began reporting that Dmitry was missing training sessions. He wasn't feeling well. He said he needed to see a doctor. Before he was able to make that appointment, Dmitry passed away from cardiac arrest in his sleep. He was 30 years old. The 10,000 calorie diet had placed a level of strain on his body that it could not sustain, and the collapse, when it came, was sudden and final. In November 1928, Glenn and Bessie Hyde launched a wooden sweep boat onto the Colorado River with the intention of setting a speed record through the Grand Canyon and making Bessie the first woman to complete the route. Neither of them was ever seen again, with the search teams found weeks later an intact boat, secured gear, a journal with entries running to November 30th, and no bodies. produced a physical record that resists the simple explanation without producing a satisfying alternative. Nearly a century later, the case remains one of the most analytically frustrating disappearances in the documented history of the American wilderness. The physical evidence presents a contradiction that begins with the boat itself. Glenn Hyde constructed a 20-foot wooden sweep scow, a flat-bottomed vessel designed for downstream river travel, steered by large oars mounted at the bow and stern on pivoting frames. The design has a specific utility on encumbered stretches of river where downstream momentum is predictable and the primary challenge is maintaining a central line. On the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon, it was a fundamental mismatch. The Grand Canyon section of the Colorado contains some of the most technically demanding whitewater in North America. The rapids in the lower canyon, particularly through the stretch below Diamond Creek toward the canyon's terminus, include sustained Class 4 and Class 5 water, characterized by hydraulic features that require precise and rapid repositioning of a vessel. A sweep scow by design offers limited lateral maneuverability. Its steering depends on the differential pressure of the oars against moving water, which functions adequately at low gradient but becomes increasingly unreliable as current speed, drop angle, and hydraulic complexity increase. The boat cannot be back-paddled with efficiency, cannot pivot quickly. In a rapid, that requires a boat to move laterally across a current to find a specific entry line. A sweep scow requires a level of anticipation and setup distance that the canyon's compressed geography does not always permit. Glenn Hyde had river experience, but his prior travel did not include water of this classification. Bessie Hyde had no documented river experience at all. They were not carrying life vests, a detail confirmed by multiple contemporary accounts, including the offer made by photographer Emery Kolb, which Glenn refused. The absence of personal flotation devices on a vessel with limited self-rescue capability, operated by two people with mismatched experience levels in Class 4 and Class 5 water, represents a compounding risk that hydraulic analysis of the river makes difficult to minimize. The theory that the Hydes abandoned their boat and attempted to hike out has been examined against the geography of the area where the boat was found. In significant portions of the lower canyon near Ma 237, a hike out is not a theoretical possibility. The walls do not permit it. There were no established routes, no talus fields offering footing, and no drainage systems cutting upward through the canyon wall at accessible intervals. If the Hydes left the boat voluntarily or were separated from it and survived an initial water event, the geography of their location would have severely constrained their options. The canyon does not offer the casual exit that the word hike implies. In the sections where vertical walls meet the river, the environment forecloses most alternatives to remaining on the water. The timeline established by the recovered camera film in Bessie's journal indicates the couple was alive as late as November 30th, 1928. The journal entries continue through that date without indicating a crisis. The camera film developed after recovery produced images consistent with an ongoing journey rather than a terminus. The gear inside the boat was strapped down and present, not hastily abandoned, not selectively removed. Glenn's firearm was there. Bessie's journal was there. The camera was there. This combination of functional vessel, secured equipment, and a documentary record running to a specific date with no subsequent entries is more consistent with a sudden and unexpected event than with a deliberate departure. People who leave a boat intentionally take their camera, they take their journal, they take the firearm. The physical condition of the boat's interior argues against a rapid catastrophic event as well, since the gear remained organized and secured. What the physical evidence does not resolve is a mechanism that separated two people from a boat without producing the visible wreckage of an impact or the scattered debris of a capsize. The comment Bessie made at Grand Canyon Village, observing Emery Kolb's daughter's shoes and wondering aloud whether she would ever wear pretty shoes again, has been treated in popular accounts as a portent. Analyzed in historical context, it reflects something more documentable: the psychological condition of a person under sustained stress, operating at the boundary of their physical capacity. In a social situation, that constrained her ability to express reservation. Her comment about the shoes is not evidence of supernatural premonition. It is evidence of a person whose psychological processing of the situation ahead of her was leaking into her social behavior in ways she may not have been fully aware of. The 1977 forensic evidence into a skull discovered on Emery Kolb's property, conducted after Kolb's death, determined that the remains did not belong to Glenn Hyde. The conclusion was reached through physical comparison and analysis. The skull had a bullet hole, which generated significant speculation about Kolb's possible involvement in the disappearance. But the forensic determination removed the evidentiary basis for that theory. It did not remove the theory from circulation. The Georgie Clark case produced a different kind of analytical problem. When Clark died in 1992, a search of her belongings produced Glenn and Bessie Hyde's marriage certificate, along with evidence that she had changed her name and a concealed firearm. The marriage certificate has not been explained. Historians and researchers who examined the Georgie Clark hypothesis that she was Bessie Hyde, having survived the river and constructed a new identity, pointed to documentary evidence and physical comparisons that were inconsistent with the claim. The photographs did not match. The documented biography of Georgie Clark contains verifiable elements that predate and contradict the timeline required for the theory to hold. What the Georgie Clark case illustrates is a consistent pattern in how unresolved disappearances generate mythology. When a case produces no body, no confirmed cause, and no exit narrative, the human tendency to construct resolution takes over. The 1971 woman who claimed to be Bessie Hyde and confessed to killing Glenn was subsequently identified as someone with a documented history of making provocative claims. She was not Bessie Hyde. The confession had no evidentiary support and collapsed under scrutiny. The skull on Kolb's property was not Glenn Hyde. The Georgie Clark hypothesis did not survive documentary analysis. What remains after the theories are removed is the original physical record: a boat at mile 237, gear secured in present, a journal ending in November 30th, no bodies recovered, no confirmed exit, canyon walls that in significant stretches go straight into the water with nothing between them and the river. The canyon has not produced anything further. The case remains open in the only sense that matters. The evidence does not close it. On March 22, 2026, at approximately 11:45 p.m., Air Canada Express Flight 8646, a Bombardier CRJ-900 operated by Jazz Aviation, was cleared to land on runway 4 at LaGuardia Airport following a routine departure from Montreal. Simultaneously, a Port Authority rescue and firefighting vehicle designated Truck 1 was cleared to cross the same runway in response to a separate aircraft that had reported an issue. Both clearances were issued through standard channels. Both were procedurally valid in isolation. Neither controller held the complete operational picture at the moment both clearances were active. This is the systemic condition the investigation is examining. Not a single error, but a convergence of procedural gaps that individually fall within tolerable margins and collectively produce a catastrophic outcome.
384 is declaring an emergency. Flight attendants in the back are feeling ill. Because of the odor, we will need to go into any available gate at this time.
Okay, roger that. Hey, this is Ed again. Do you guys have any gate for United? Because now he's declaring an emergency. They want to get out. Yeah.
Let me ask them. I'll call you right back.
Okay, roger that.
Jazz 646, the water.
Yeah, with you for GLS 4 for Jazz 646.
646, number 2, clear to land 4.
Close to land number 2 for Jazz 646.
And 2384, do you have a gate available at this time? Otherwise, we will be probably requesting air stairs.
Give me 1 second.
2384.
Stand by, United. Who is the vehicle needed to cross the runway? Emergency vehicles calling on ground, or are you calling on tower?
Truck 1 and Company, LaGuardia Tower.
Truck 1 and Company.
Truck 1 and Company, LaGuardia Tower, requesting to cross 4 at Delta.
Truck 1 and Company, cross 4 at Delta.
Truck 1 and Company, crossing 4 at Delta.
Frontier 4195 to stop there, please. Stop. Truck 1, stop. Sorry, Truck 1. Stop, Truck 1. Stop, Truck 1, stop.
4195, we're staying here.
Delta 2603, go around, runway heading 2000. Jazz 646. Jazz 646, I see you collide with a vehicle here, just hold position. I know you can't move. The vehicles are responding to you now.
Is the runway closed?
Delta 2603, go around, runway heading 2000.
Heading 2000, go around, Delta 2603.
LaGuardia Tower.
Tower, Carnan, to reiterate, LaGuardia Airport is closed at this time. No aircraft in or out.
Okay.
The CRJ-900 touched down normally. Captain Antoine Forrest and First Officer Mackenzie Gunther began the standard rollout deceleration sequence. At rollout speeds following touchdown on a wet runway, conditions consistent with the misty and rainy weather reported that night, a CRJ-900 requires significant runway distance to decelerate to taxi speed. The aircraft was committed to its rollout. It was not in a position to abort or reverse course. Truck 1 was crossing runway 4 on an authorized path. The vehicle was not equipped with a real-time position broadcasting system that would have made its location visible to both ground controllers and the cockpit crew. Airport surface detection systems did not generate a conflict alert with sufficient lead time for either the crew or ground control to act. When air traffic control identified the convergence and transmitted instructions for the truck to stop, the distance between the two vehicles had already closed beyond the threshold at which the instruction could have produced a meaningful outcome. The impact crushed the nose section of the aircraft and overturned the vehicle. Captain Forrest and First Officer Gunther were killed. A flight attendant sustained serious injuries after being displaced from her jump seat while still restrained. Passengers and the firefighters inside Truck 1 were injured, with most subsequently treated and released. Aviation safety analysis uses the term accident chain to describe the sequential alignment of individual failures that produce a catastrophic event. Each link in the chain represents a condition or decision that, had it been different, would have broken the sequence. In the LaGuardia incident, the preliminary findings identified at least 3 distinct links: the absence of a position broadcasting system on the ground vehicle, the failure of surface detection equipment to generate a timely alert, and a coordination gap between ground movement control and approach control that left neither frequency with complete situational awareness. The National Transportation Safety Board's investigation will examine whether any of these conditions represented a deviation from established procedure or whether all of them existed within the boundaries of current regulatory requirements. That distinction is significant. If the gaps were procedural violations, the corrective pathway is enforcement. If the gaps were systemic, present within a compliant operation, the corrective pathway requires regulatory revision. The latter scenario is a more analytically concerning. An aviation system that produces a fatal runway incursion while all individual actors are operating within approved parameters is a system in which the safety margin is structurally insufficient. The 2006 Comair Flight 5191 accident at Lexington, Kentucky, the 1977 Tenerife disaster, and multiple documented runway incursion events in the intervening decades have each contributed to revisions in ground movement procedures, surface surveillance requirements, and controller coordination protocols. The LaGuardia incident will be assessed against that accumulated institutional knowledge. The outcome on March 22nd was statistically less catastrophic than the physics of the collision permitted. A higher rollout speed at the moment of impact or a different contact geometry between the aircraft nose and the vehicle would have produced different results. For the passengers in the forward cabin, the survival of the majority of those on board is not evidence that the safety systems functioned adequately. It is evidence that the specific parameters of this particular collision fell within a range that the aircraft's structural integrity could partially absorb. The NTSB investigation remains open. No final report has been issued. The question the investigation is required to answer whether the deaths of Captain Forrest and First Officer Gunther resulted from a correctable systemic failure or from a residual gap that existing protocols have not yet addressed has not been resolved. Runway 4 at LaGuardia remains in operation. On March 23, 2026, Eric Valencia, 37 years old, was released from the Irwindale Police Department in California following a 3-day hold on suspicion of DUI and child endangerment. He exited the facility carrying his personal belongings and his phone. Surveillance footage documented what happened next. Valencia walked across the parking lot, opened the rear door of a decommissioned patrol SUV parked in a lot awaiting maintenance, entered the back seat, and closed the door behind him. He was not found for 3 days. The vehicle Valencia entered was out of service and had been designated for maintenance. It was not secured. It was not checked. It was parked in the exterior lot of an active police department where officers and civilian staff moved through the area continuously across 3 days of normal operations.
Sure?
For sure.
What's his name?
Eric Valencia.
The 23rd, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He looks like he's decomposing. He just looks like Where is it?
In the back of the unit right here.
Back of this one?
Yes, the back seat. Should be open. Sorry?
Are they open? You just like got in there?
I have no idea. I just got out here. He actually, where'd he go? So he actually discovered them. I just got here.
Okay.
Yeah. Presumably it was open. He climbed in. I don't know. I'm not too sure.
Okay.
The rear doors of decommissioned patrol vehicles are not operable from the inside, a design feature standard to law enforcement vehicles intended to prevent the egress of detainees during transport. Once the door closed, Valencia had no mechanical means of opening it from within. His phone was with him throughout. The records show no outgoing calls to emergency services during the period he was inside the vehicle. The reason for that absence have not been established in the public record. The toxicology results that may bear on his physical and cognitive state during that period are pending, with the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner indicating the final cause of death determination could take weeks or months. The systemic failure of the case documents is precise. A decommissioned law enforcement vehicle with a non-functional interior door release was left unsecured in a publicly accessible area immediately adjacent to a facility that had just processed and released a civilian. No protocol required the vehicle to be locked. No protocol required periodic physical inspection of out-of-service vehicles in the lot. No alert was generated by the surveillance system that had recorded Valencia's entry. Attorney Lee Merritt, retained by Valencia's family, had stated publicly that basic safety steps were not followed. The department has acknowledged that the vehicle should have been secured and that regular checks were not conducted as procedure required. An internal investigation is underway. An independent review firm has been engaged.
They didn't take us serious when we were clearly telling them, and come to find out that he was here in a car. The whole time, he's a good person, and he didn't deserve to go like this, and we want answers and justice for him.
The findings have been submitted to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Justice System Integrity Division. No charges have been filed. No final determination has been made public. The analytical questions the case presents is not primarily about individual negligence. It is about the structural gap between two systems that operated in proximity without coordination. The release processing system returned Valencia to the exterior of the facility and concluded its function. The vehicle management system had designated the SUV for maintenance, but had not secured it or removed it from accessible space. Neither system contained a mechanism that would have registered the interaction between a recently released civilian and an unsecured vehicle with a non-functional interior release. The surveillance footage established the timeline only because it was reviewed after the fact. It did not generate a real-time alert. It did not produce an intervention. It documented an entry that went unaddressed for 72 hours in a location where the reasonable assumption would be that the presence of law enforcement personnel would function as a passive safety net. The footage is evidence that the passive safety net did not exist in any operational sense. Eric Valencia's family is asked how this could occur outside an active police station. The investigative record, as it currently stands, answers that question structurally. The conditions that produced the outcome were not exceptional. They were the product of standard decommissioning practice, standard lot management, in the absence of any cross-system check that would have identified the gap between them. The investigation remains open. The vehicle has not been removed from the lot. Two experienced wingsuit pilots identified in the source material as Gabe and Natalie arrived at a remote mountain launch site after a pre-dawn departure and several hours of travel. The forecast had indicated favorable conditions. By the time they reached the exit point, observable turbulence had developed. They launched anyway.
Baby, are you okay? Shit. Hey. Can you feel anything? Hey.
Natalie impacted the terrain. She sustained multiple spinal fractures and additional trauma. Gabe, having landed separately, contacted emergency services. A helicopter arrived approximately 30 minutes later. The full extraction took nearly 2 hours.
Okay, I'm calling. Hey, ciao, buongiorno. Abbiamo bisogno di un elicottero a Petralonga per un paracadutista.
Help me!
Ha fatto male. Baby.
Yes, where are you?
I'm talking to them. They're coming, okay? Baby, they're sending the helicopter.
I'm fine.
Hey, it's gonna be okay.
Where are you?
I'm down here. They're coming with the helicopter really soon, okay?
Okay.
All right. Where does it hurt?
Just my back. My.
Don't worry, we'll get you home, okay?
Okay. Where are you?
I'm at the landing, but I already talked to them. I talked to 2 people, and they're sending the heli. They know exactly where you are.
Both pilots recovered completely and returned to the sport. The decision to launch despite visible turbulence is the analytical center of this case, and Gabe addressed it directly in subsequent accounts. The operative mechanism was commitment bias, a documented cognitive pattern in which the resources already invested in reaching a decision point increase the psychological resistance to abandoning it, independent of whether the current conditions support proceeding. The bias does not require irrational thinking. It operates precisely through rational seeming justifications. The early start, the drive, the favorable forecast that preceded the observable deterioration. Each factor functions as evidence that the original decision was sound, producing resistance to updating that assessment in response to new information. In extreme sports contexts, commitment bias intersects with the second variable, the absence of a low-cost exit. Turning back from a mountain launch site after hours of approach effort is not logistically simple. The psychological cost of reversal is compounded by the physical cost. This combination, sunk resources plus difficult reversal, creates a decision environment that systemically underweights current conditions relative to prior investment. The outcome in this case was survivable. The equipment functioned, the intercom communication between the pilots remained operational, which enabled Gabe to locate Natalie and initiate the emergency response sequence without the additional delay that a communication failure would have introduced. The extraction was technically demanding but successful. The margin between the actual outcome and a fatal one was not wide, but it existed. What the incident documents is not a failure of skill or preparation. Both pilots were experienced. Their equipment was functional and appropriate. The failure was a single decision made at the exit point, a decision that the observable conditions at that moment did not support, and that both participants later acknowledged should have produced a different outcome. Commitment bias does not require inexperience to operate. It is a structural feature of high investment decision environments. The documented research on its presence in extreme sports, military operations, and institutional decision-making consistently indicates that experience reduces but does not eliminate its effect. Natalie's spinal fracture is healed. The launch site remains where it is. On January 19, 2026 at approximately 1:09 p.m., a surveillance officer assigned to the Newark Police Department's Quality of Life Unit radioed a description of suspected narcotics activity at the intersection of Ross Street and Thorne Street. The transmission identified 2 suspect vehicles, including a white Chrysler and several individuals. Plainclothes officers responded in unmarked vehicles. Uniformed officers responded in marked units. The convergence of both elements on a single city block intersection within minutes produced what tactical analysts describe as a compressed engagement environment. Multiple officers, multiple civilians, multiple vehicles, and no established perimeter within which movement could be controlled. Officer Nasheed Reynolds arrived at approximately 1:11 p.m. The initial detention sequence placed 2 civilians against a Chrysler, while Reynolds assisted a separate detention against his unmarked vehicle, which was positioned directly in front of the Chrysler. This created a tactical bottleneck. The Chrysler was bracketed between Reynolds' unmarked vehicle at the front and the active detention occurring at its sides, with no marked unit positioned to the rear to prevent reverse movement. When the Chrysler began reversing, Reynolds moved toward the vehicle and placed his hand on the hood. This action, physically positioning his body against the front of a running vehicle operated by an uncooperative driver, represents what use of force analysts classify as a position of disadvantage. The officer's body became the primary obstacle between the vehicle and forward movement. The tactical geometry of the point offered Reynolds a narrowing set of options in an accelerating time frame. When the Chrysler turned its wheels and moved forward, Reynolds fired multiple times. The kinetic engagement lasted seconds. The Chrysler continued down Ross Street and crashed into a parked vehicle.
Right there to the far end, the patrol car to your left. Off that shit. Don't move. Head back to back. The guy standing by himself on the left. Hey, don't move. Don't move. Shots fired! Shots fired! Don't move! Unit, just go ahead and over there. I'll tell you later. Go inside Popeyes. Go on inside Popeyes. 594, send me EMS. We got one male shot. I receive. Alright, do I have units responding?
Reynolds reached the crashed vehicle and provided immediate medical aid to Wally Bay, 42 years old. Both Bay and a second wounded civilian were transported to University Hospital in Newark. Bay was pronounced deceased at 1:51 p.m. The second civilian was treated and released. The Newark Police Division, in alignment with the broad national shift in law enforcement use of force doctrine, maintains policy guidance that addresses the discharge of a firearm at a moving vehicle. The policy concern is grounded in physics rather than intent. A vehicle struck by gunfire does not stop. The driver, if incapacitated, ceases to control the vehicle, producing what analysts term an uncontrolled projectile, a multi-thousand-pound object moving under its own inertia with no operator input on a public street with unpredictable trajectories. The kinetic energy of a vehicle at low speed exceeds the capacity of small arms fire to arrest its momentum. The policy variance between departments nationally reflects an unresolved tension. An officer in a position of disadvantage relative to a moving vehicle may have no alternative engagement option, while the act of firing simultaneously creates a secondary hazard that this charge is intended to eliminate. The Essex County Prosecutor's Office is handling the investigation. No charges have been filed against Reynolds. The investigation remains open. The forensic reconstruction of the Chrysler following the crash documented the trajectory of the rounds fired by Reynolds. Ballistic analysis correlates the entry angles of the projectiles with the vehicle's position and movement at the moment of discharge. That correlation between where the rounds entered the vehicle and where Reynolds was standing relative to the Chrysler as it moved is the physical record against which the sequence of the shooting is being reconstructed. The trajectory data bears directly on the question of whether the discharge occurred while the vehicle was moving toward Reynolds, moving past him, or in some intermediate position. That determination has not been made public. The body cam footage, the ballistic reconstruction, and the timeline established by the radio transmissions are in the evidence file. The investigation is ongoing. No final determination has been issued by the Essex County Prosecutor's Office. Wally Bay was 42 years old. The intersection of Ross Street and Thorne Street is still there. On January 31, 2012, Johnson County Sheriff's deputies responded to residents in Mountain City, Tennessee. Bill Payne, 36, was found shot in the head with his throat cut. Billie Jean Hayworth, 23, was found nearby, still holding their 13-month-old son Tyler. The child was unharmed. Nothing had been taken from the residence. The medical examiner's findings documented wounds consistent with execution-style methodology, close range, deliberately placed, suggesting a shooter operating with a level of certainty that excluded hesitation. The forensic record establishes a clear sequence of purposeful action rather than a confrontation that escalated unexpectedly. Janelle Potter was in her 30s and had no documented independent social life outside the family home. Her social environment was filtered almost entirely through a home computer shared with her parents, Marvin and Barbara Potter. What the investigative record reveals is a digital echo chamber in which Janelle's interpretation of external events, the people she interacted with online, the perceived sights and threats she communicated to her parents, was never tested against independent external reality. Marvin and Barbara Potter had no mechanism for verifying their daughter's account of events because they had no independent access to the social world in which those events supposedly occurred. This environment produced the conditions for what behavioral analysts describe as as cognitive grooming, a process in which one person's perception of reality is systematically shaped by the filtered information supplied by another. Janelle was the sole interpreter of the external world for her parents. The threats she described were real to Marvin Potter because Janelle was his only source of information about them. The secondary gain for Janelle was the mobilization of parental protection in response to social conflicts she could not resolve through direct confrontation. Chris Protocol. The emails attributed to Chris, a fabricated CIA operative, represent a documented instance of social engineering directed at a family member. As analyzed from the recovered fragments, employed the framing of official threat assessment, formal registers, specific warnings about named individuals, and implicit authorization for protective action. Janelle used linguistic mirroring of intelligence communication formats to produce documents that would appear credible to a recipient with no framework for evaluating their authenticity. Marvin Potter was that recipient. His belief that his family was under tactical threat from a genuine intelligence identified danger was not a spontaneous delusion. It was a product of months of manufactured documentation, physically printed and presented as external evidence. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's recovery of those documents required agents to physically reconstruct hand-shredded paper fragments found in the Potter vehicle, a painstaking process of matching torn edges across hundreds of pieces to restore legible text. The reassembled emails provided the evidentiary chain linking the fabricated threat narrative to the Potter residence as its point of origin. Every IP address traced back to the same home computer. Barbara Potter's search history, including the query, "Can a murderer be forgiven?" entered 2 weeks before the killings, was recovered from that same machine. Marvin Potter confessed. He stated he believed he was protecting his daughter. The ballistic evidence from his vehicle matched the crime scene. He was convicted. Janelle Potter was also convicted of first-degree murder. Both received life sentences. Tyler Payne was 13 months old. The home computer is in the evidence record. The shredded emails, reassembled on a table by TBI agents, are in the case file. On June 23, 2012, the upper parking deck of the All-Go Center Mall in Elliott Lake, Ontario failed catastrophically. A section measuring approximately 12 by 24 meters dropped through the ceiling of the retail space below. 2 people were killed. More than 20 were injured. The Bellinger Commission, the independent public inquiry convened to investigate the collapse, produced findings that identified not a single catastrophic error, but a decades-long accumulation of documented neglect operating within a culture of deferred accountability. The All-Go Center Mall was constructed in 1979 with a parking deck positioned directly above the retail floor. This configuration created a persistent engineering liability. The structural distinction between dead load, the fixed weight of the building's own materials, and live load, the variable weight of the vehicles, pedestrians, and environmental accumulation, is fundamental to parking deck design. A deck carrying vehicular traffic imposes dynamic and variable loads that a purely static structural calculation does not fully capture. The hollow core slab design used in the All-Go Center's deck was not inherently defective, but its performance depended on the integrity of the steel reinforcement embedded within it and the shear connectors linking the slab to its supporting beams. The catastrophic failure of the shear connectors under sustained load was a terminal mechanical event on June 23rd. That failure did not occur without precondition, the chemistry of structural deterioration. Northern Ontario winters introduced road salt, sodium chloride, and calcium chloride onto parking surfaces at volumes that accumulate across seasons. Water carrying dissolved chloride ions penetrates concrete through expansion joints, surface cracks, and areas of inadequate waterproofing. Once in contact with embedded steel, chloride ions initiate an electrochemical corrosion process that disrupts the passive oxide layer protecting the metal. The resulting systemic metallurgical degradation proceeds internally, invisible to surface inspection, progressively reducing the load-bearing cross-section of the reinforcing elements. In the All-Go Center deck, this process had been operating for years. The Bellinger Commission found that water infiltration through the deck was a known and recurring condition. Repairs commissioned in response to documented leaks addressed surface symptoms without resolving the underlying corrosion advancing through the structural core. The Commission's findings documented a pattern in which evidence of structural deterioration produced repair orders rather than engineering reassessment. Leaks were patched, Inspections were conducted. The accumulated findings of those inspections, evidence of ongoing water infiltration, surface deterioration, and the conditions producing corrosion, did not trigger a structural load reassessment or a recommendation to close the deck. The administrative normalization it defines describes precisely this pattern. Each individual maintenance response falls within the boundaries of acceptable practice, while the cumulative trajectory of the structure moves steadily toward failure. No single decision produced the collapse. The collapse was the product of a system in which deterioration was consistently managed rather than resolved. The rescue operation that followed the collapse was halted at intervals due to the assessed risk of secondary collapse in the remaining structure. The Bellinger Commission examined this decision, and its findings regarding the rescue timeline were critical rather than vindicating. The inquiry did not characterize the halt as a straightforward application of sound structural calculation. Criminal charges were filed. The court found insufficient evidence for conviction. The security camera footage, the maintenance records, and the commission's findings are in the public record. The lottery kiosk is not. A security camera at this front door caught something no one can explain. Two sisters walk up to the house. Right before they go inside, they notice something sitting near the entrance. A shopping cart filled with old, worn-out dolls. They slow down for a second and look at it. One of them steps a little closer, like she's trying to figure out where it came from. Then they both turn and go inside.
We just need to go in and get your smoke. I don't know. Shut up. Hurry up, hurry up.
I don't go to your house and mess with your shit, so don't mess with mine.
A few seconds later, someone walks up to the door, but that's not the part people focus on. While everything is happening inside, the camera picks up something else. In the background, near the hallway, a dark shape moves across the frame. It's quick, too quick to clearly make out. It doesn't move like a person and then it's gone. A little later, it shows up again, this time outside the house, near the same spot. Neither of the girls noticed it at the time. They only saw it after watching the footage back. Now they refuse to stay there alone. Watch closely. What do you think that is? A woman runs into the ocean, and within seconds she can't get back out. This was filmed at a beach in Cabo San Lucas, right in front of a large resort. It looks normal at first. People are walking nearby, waves are coming in steady, nothing extreme. Then everything changes. This section of beach has a steep drop right at the shoreline. The sand falls away fast, so waves don't roll in gently. They hit hard, then pull straight back into deeper water. The woman runs in and stops right where the waves are breaking. She sits down at the edge. The first wave hits her and pushes her backward. When it pulls away, it drags her slightly with it. She tries to stay in place, but she's already off balance. She can't keep her balance. Another wave hits. This one lifts her higher, then drops her into the water. When it pulls back, her body shifts again, a little farther from where she started. Each wave pulls her farther. She's not swimming. She's not moving away from the impact zone. She stays right where the waves are strongest, getting hit over and over. People nearby start to react. A few men run into the water to help her. As soon as they step in, you can see the problem. The sand under their feet gives way quickly, just like it did for her. They stumble almost immediately. One of them reaches for her arm, but a wave crashes into all of them at once. It knocks them sideways and breaks their grip. They try again, but the timing is off. The waves keep hitting before they can get control. They're losing control. The water keeps pulling back between each wave, forcing them to fight just to stay upright. One rescuer braces himself, planting his feet, while another tries to lift her up, but she's not helping much. She keeps adjusting her clothes and shifting her position instead of standing up or moving with them. That slows everything down. Another wave hits, harder this time. It pushes all of them back again. For a moment, it looks like they might all get dragged out together. Then one of them manages to grab her under the arm and pull her forward. Another helps from the side. They time it between waves and drag her toward the sand. Step by step, they get her out of the impact zone. Once they reach flatter ground, the pull weakens. They're able to get her fully out of the water. She survives. No official information was released about who she was. There were no follow-up statements or reports, but the video spread quickly online. Locals began pointing out the same thing. This stretch of beach is known for a strong shore break. The drop-off is steep and the waves hit with direct force. There's no gradual entry. Even small waves can knock someone down and pull them out. And once you're in that zone, getting back out takes effort and timing. From a distance, it looks safe. Up close, it isn't. Imagine driving down a pitch-black Montana highway at night only to have a massive, shaggy figure suddenly materialize in your headlights. For 44-year-old Randy Lee Tenley, this was the exact reaction he was hoping for. He wasn't a hunter and he wasn't a soldier on a training exercise. He was standing on the pavement of Highway 93, wearing a full-body camouflage ghillie suit, a garment specifically designed to make a human being invisible. On the night of August 26, 2012, near the shores of Flathead Lake, that invisibility worked far too well. First responders who arrived at the scene of a reported collision found Tenley's body on the asphalt. The sight was immediate and confusing. A man dressed from head to toe in thick synthetic moss and grass-like fibers. In the dark, against the backdrop of the Flathead National Forest, he would have been virtually indistinguishable from the brush. However, Tenley wasn't in the brush. He was in the right-hand lane of the southbound highway. The investigation into why a man would stand in traffic dressed as a forest spirit quickly moved away from hunting. Tenley carried no weapon, no tags, and no traditional gear. The explanation provided by his friends was far more eccentric. Randy was attempting to stage a Bigfoot hoax. He wanted to go viral before going viral was even a standard term. The plan was simple and, in his mind, harmless. He would linger near the shoulder, let a few drivers catch a glimpse of a Sasquatch in their peripherals, and vanish into the woods before the authorities could be called. He wanted to create a local legend, but the physics of the situation were unforgiving. A 15-year-old girl driving down the highway never saw him because the ghillie suit is designed to break up the human silhouette and absorb light. Tenley was a ghost until the moment of impact. The initial strike was devastating, but the tragedy didn't end there. As Tenley lay in the roadway, a second vehicle driven by a 17-year-old also failed to see the camouflaged figure and struck him again. By the time the dust settled, Randy Lee Tenley was gone. The story might have ended there, as a bizarre cautionary tale about the dangers of urban legends, if it weren't for a discovery made later by internet sleuths. On July 18, 2012, about 5 weeks before the accident, a curious thread appeared on 4chan's random board. An anonymous user posted a brief, confident message. "Hey B, don't ask me how I know because I cannot tell you, but I have it on good authority that Bigfoot will be undeniably proven to exist by the end of August. It's all over. He's real. How does that make you feel? Anyone currently a believer?" At the time, the post was likely ignored as typical internet noise, but looking back, the timeline is chillingly precise. The user didn't just guess that Bigfoot would be spotted. They set a deadline, the end of August. Randy Tenley stepped onto that highway on August 26. Whether Randy was the original poster himself or a friend was trying to prime the audience for his discovery, the connection is hard to ignore. He wasn't just pulling a prank for a laugh. He was likely trying to fulfill a prophecy he had already put into writing. He wanted to be the proof the world was waiting for. Instead, he became a permanent part of the very highway he tried to haunt. It leaves you wondering how many other proven mysteries are just people standing in the dark, waiting to be seen. In May 2025, a girl posted a video that quickly spread across social media. That night, she and her boyfriend were driving home from a concert in California. It was late, the road was empty, and their dashcam was recording as they made their way down a dark stretch of highway. At first, nothing looks unusual. Then something appears in the middle of the road, but it's not there right away. As the car gets closer, the figure suddenly becomes visible, like it wasn't there a second before. It's standing still, directly in their path. There's no movement, no reaction, just a person-shaped figure in the middle of the road. They don't understand what they're seeing, and neither does anyone else who's watched the footage. Some people say it's just a trick of the camera. Others think it's something else entirely. Watch closely. How does something appear like that without being there first? July 27, 2020, Chongqing, China. Everything looked normal. Then the ground disappeared. Two women were walking on a sidewalk, and in less than a second, they were gone. They were near the Wuzhang Second Bridge in Chongqing's Wulong district. Nothing looked out of place. No cracks, no warning signs. Then it collapsed. They didn't trip. They didn't react. There was nothing under them. Both women dropped straight into the ground as the pavement gave way beneath their feet. This had been building for weeks. The summer of 2020 brought some of the worst flooding China had seen in decades, affecting more than 63 million people. In Chongqing, weeks of heavy rain had soaked the ground, but the real damage was happening underground, and no one could see it. Water had been eroding the soil beneath roads and sidewalks. From above, it looked solid. Underneath, it was already hollow. By the time those women stepped onto this section, it was already gone. A nearby security camera captured everything. The footage shows both women walking side by side at a normal pace with no hesitation and no signs of danger. Then it happens. The ground drops out in less than a second. The pavement caves in, and both women fall straight down into a deep hole. One moment they're walking, the next they're completely out of sight. People nearby ran over and looked down. One person said, "You can't even see them." Emergency crews arrived quickly. Firefighters used ladders and ropes to get down into the collapse, moving carefully through debris to reach them. Both women were still alive. One had a crushed foot from falling debris. The other had a head injury. They were pulled out and taken to the hospital. Their identities were never released, and no updates were made public after that. But once the video spread online, it raised bigger concerns. People started pointing out how often sinkholes like this were happening in major cities. Many blamed rapid construction and weak underground infrastructure, especially during extreme weather. And this wasn't an isolated case. Just 6 months earlier, in January 2020, a sinkhole in Xining swallowed a bus. A retired police officer named Zhang Hong ran toward the scene after hearing people scream. He saw someone hanging onto the edge and reached out to help. Then it collapsed again. The ground gave way under him and several others trying to help. 6 people died in that incident. The same problem caused what happened in Chongqing. The only difference was timing and luck. Without that footage, this would have been just another short report, but the video shows how fast it really happens. 1 second, everything looks normal. Then it collapses, and there's no time to react. A man who lives alone started noticing something strange in his house. Every time he came home from work, his dogs were acting differently. They were restless, on edge, like something had scared them while he was gone. After a while, he decided to set up a security camera to see what was happening overnight. One night around 4 a.m., the camera recorded something he wasn't expecting. At first, everything looks normal. The room is quiet, the dogs are inside their cages. Then without warning, one of the cages suddenly moves. It doesn't slide a little, it's pulled forward with force. The dog inside immediately jumps out and starts looking around the room, trying to figure out what just happened. But there is nothing there. After a few seconds, the dog slowly backs away and then hesitantly goes back into the cage. There's still nothing visible in the room. The man didn't notice any of this until he reviewed the footage later. Now he's trying to understand what could have moved that cage. Watch it closely. What do you think caused that? The water suddenly surges over the promenade and people are still standing there filming. This is North Beach in Durban, South Africa, March 12, 2017. You can see crowds lined up along the edge, phones out, people watching the waves roll in. At first it looks manageable. It doesn't look dangerous yet. The water pushes forward, spills over the walkway, then pulls back. People step away, then move right back in. Some are laughing, some are just recording. Then another wave comes in, bigger this time. It crashes over the promenade force, pushing water across the concrete and into nearby areas. You can see people stumbling as it hits their legs. They're not expecting how strong it hits. Some try to hold their ground, others turn and start backing up, but many stay right where they are, focused on their screens. Then it hits again. A surge rolls in faster and higher than the others. It slams into the front of the crowd and keeps going. Water rushes across the walkway, carrying debris with it. People lose their footing. Some get knocked sideways, others fall completely. You can see bodies getting pushed along the ground as the water moves through. They can't stay standing. The surge reaches past the promenade now, flooding into the beachfront parking area. Sections of the walkway start breaking apart. Heavy structures shift. Underground pipes are exposed as the ground gives way. It's no longer just waves, it's force. This wasn't random. 5 days earlier, Cyclone Inalo hit Madagascar. The storm pushed energy across the Indian Ocean, building large swells heading toward South Africa's east coast. On top of that, this happened during a spring high tide around 4 p.m. That combination made everything worse. Waves were reaching up to 10 feet, hitting the shore with more power than usual and traveling farther inland than people expected. Warnings were already in place. Lifeguards were on the promenade. The beach had been closed. The officials were telling people to stay back, but hundreds of people stayed. You can see it clearly in the footage. People standing right at the edge waiting for the next wave, recording it. Then another surge hits. This one breaks through a section of the crowd. A young girl standing on a concrete pier with her family is struck directly. The wave lifts her and pulls her into the water. She disappears instantly. Lifeguards react fast. A rescue boat is launched. They reach her and bring her back. Paramedics begin working on her right there, but it's not enough. She doesn't survive. 17 more people are taken to the hospital with serious injuries. Over 100 people need help. More than 35 lifeguards are deployed across the area, pulling people out, treating injuries, trying to control the situation. It turns into a mass rescue. Photographer Craig Dove, who was there filming, summed it up simply. A big one just rolled through, and that's exactly what it looked like. Wave after wave, each one stronger than the last, hitting people who didn't move in time. After the footage spread online, a lot of the focus shifted away from the waves and onto the crowd, because the signs were already there. Water was already coming over the promenade. The waves were getting stronger. The warnings had been given, but people stayed, phones up, waiting for a better shot. And by the time the biggest surge hit, it was too late to react. On March 18, 2011, a post appeared on 4chan's paranormal board that would spark one of the most unsettling mysteries in the site's history. It started when an anonymous user, known as the OP, posted a photo of a jagged, dark opening in a concrete basement wall. It looked like someone had hand-dug a hole into the earth behind the house. The OP said they had just found it and had no idea how deep it went. They had a light on an extension cord but no actual flashlights, and they asked the board for advice on whether they should go inside. At first, the reaction was typical for 4chan. Most users assumed it was a fake or a staged creepypasta. However, the intrigue grew when reverse image searches came up empty. There was no record of this photo anywhere else on the internet. The OP promised to go in and document the exploration. They posted a quick update. "We're going exploring and taking pictures on the way. We'll check back as long as we're not dead." A few minutes later, a second update appeared. The OP claimed they had gone halfway through the tunnel and saw something that made them turn back for more gear. They promised to post more photos shortly, but that was the last time the OP ever posted. Suspicion immediately filled the thread. Users pointed out a major flaw. If the OP had never been in the tunnel before, they wouldn't know where halfway was. As the hours passed with no sign of the OP, the board began to mock the situation, assuming it was a failed prank or that the person had simply logged off. But just as the thread was about to die, a different user posted a gruesome image that changed everything. The photo showed the mutilated remains of a woman. It was meant to be a dark joke, a way of saying the OP had been killed in the tunnel. It was a standard disgusting 4chan response until a user named Gozier replied. He wasn't trolling. He asked where the picture came from because he was convinced the woman in the photo was his missing ex-girlfriend. He explained that she had vanished years ago without a trace. They hadn't broken up. She had just dropped off the face of the earth. Because the original thread wasn't archived properly, the actual gore photo is gone. but the descriptions from those who saw it are vivid. The woman in the photo was missing her eyes and her lips. Despite the damage, Naim Gozier saw specific features he recognized. At first, the board didn't believe him, but his reaction seemed too visceral for a simple prank. He posted that he was losing his mind and had already emailed the picture to the police in the city where she originally went missing. He said he felt like he was gonna vomit. The skeptics began to back off. A small group of users decided to help him analyze the photo. They looked at the dead foliage in the background and decided it was likely winter when the photo was taken, where the decomposition of the body suggested she had died during a warmer month. They asked Naim Gozier when his girlfriend had disappeared. He told them the last time they spoke was in August of 2008. The timeline was a close match. Some users warned him that the photo might be an old one from a gore thread that predated 2008, meaning it couldn't be her. He said he never visited those parts of the internet and prayed the photo was old, which would mean she might still be alive. He mentioned his own family situation was difficult. Her mother had dementia and her father had vanished years earlier, simply walking out one day and never returning. His only contact had been her brother, but he claimed the brother had died the previous year. To prove he was serious, Naim Gozier eventually posted 2 partially censored pictures of his ex-girlfriend from when she was alive. The internet detectives on the board compared the living photos to the dead photo. The similarities were hard to ignore. They noted the jawline and body type were a near perfect match. Then they found a very specific detail. In the gore photo, the bridge of the dead girl's nose had a distinct bump. They asked Naim Gozier if his ex had that same feature. He confirmed she did. He also said the clothing on the body looked like items she owned. There was even a tattoo on the hip of the corpse that appeared to be in the exact same spot as a tattoo his ex-girlfriend had. By this point, the threat had shifted completely. It wasn't about a basement tunnel anymore. It was about a possible murder victim. The board advised Naim Gozier to move the investigation to a separate blog since 4chan threads disappear so quickly. He set up a Tumblr page. For a few weeks, he used the page to provide updates on his talks with the police. He posted 2 more censored photos of his ex, giving the public a better look at her. Then in April 2011, he posted a short update saying he was back in town, and a bigger update was coming that night. But that update never happened. He went silent for an entire month. When he finally returned to Tumblr in May, the tone of his writing was completely different. He claimed he had lost his login info and had spent the month traveling to her hometown. He said he tracked down a friend who told him the ex was planning to move out of state. Then he claimed he found marriage records from 2009 in her name in another state. Most surprisingly, he said the brother he thought was dead was actually alive. He said the brother was shocked to hear from him but refused to talk about his sister. This sudden shift felt wrong to everyone following the story. The dead brother was suddenly alive and the missing girl was supposedly married and living elsewhere. It felt like a forced ending that ignored the evidence they had already seen. The users who had helped him identify the body were now the ones who were suspicious. They wondered if he was being threatened or if the whole thing had been a lie. The last 2 posts on the Tumblr were the most disturbing. They were repetitive and frantic. He told people to stop calling him and to leave him alone. He wrote "quit" and "stop" dozens of times. The very last post said it was finally quiet, the screaming had stopped, and he could finally go to sleep. After that, he vanished from the internet. There are a few ways to look at what happened. One is that the entire thing was a hoax. The person who found the tunnel, the person who posted the gore, and Naim Gozier could have been the same person. This would explain the strange scripted ending on the Tumblr page. However, many people who were there felt the middle of the story was too detailed to be a total fabrication. Another theory is that Naim Gozier was telling the truth at the start. He really did have a missing ex and saw resemblance in that photo. In this version, his Tumblr was eventually hacked by someone who wanted to give the story a creepy ending. There is also the possibility that he did get a response from the police, and they confirmed the woman in the photo was not his ex-girlfriend. Relief might have caused him to shut down the search, or the authorities could have told him to stop posting details online to avoid hurting a real investigation. Regardless of what happened, the original images are gone. We can no longer check the nose bump or the tattoo ourselves. We only have the text archives of the people who were watching it happen in real time. The OP never came back to talk about the tunnel. Naim Gozier never posted again to clarify what happened to his ex. All that's left is an empty Tumblr page and the archived posts from 2011. The final conclusion is that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They are meant to sit in the back of your mind when you're alone in your own basement, wondering what's behind the wall. The interceptor boat slams hard against the Pacific Chop. To the left, a gray metallic shape cuts through the water. It's a narco sub. It does not slow down. The water is rough. Waves are hitting the hull. Petty Officer Jonathan Mills watches the moving vessel. He sees the salt water washing over the low curved deck. He says, it's gonna be hard to get on.
Este es Juan Costa de los Estados Unidos. Alto su barco ahora. Alto su barco. Alto su barco. Alto su barco ahora. Alto su barco. Alto su barco ahora. Alto su barco. Alto su barco. That's gonna be hard to get on. Alto su barco.
This moment did not happen by accident. It began 12 hours earlier, at 9:41 a.m. on June 18, 2019. A Navy P-3 surveillance aircraft scanned the Eastern Pacific, flew 200 miles west of the Colombia-Ecuador border. The sensor operator spotted a target moving north. It was a self-propelled semi-submersible. Cartels call them narco subs. These vessels are custom-built to move massive quantities of drugs. They sit 90% below the waterline. They're designed to stay invisible to radar and human eyes. The aircraft sent the coordinates to the USS Monroe. The Coast Guard cutter was 250 miles away. Captain James Estramonte gave the order. The Monroe hit 25 knots. The chase lasted 10 hours. Inside the sub, 5 men traveled north. They weren't watching anything. They were eating store-bought snacks and drinking soda. They sat on 17,000 pounds of cocaine. The sub was 40 feet long. It was painted to blend with the gray-blue water. It was a white whale. These vessels are rarely captured. Most are never found. The Monroe finally closed the distance as the light faded. They launched 2 interceptor boats from the stern. A helicopter moved into position overhead for armed overwatch. The boarding team was in the water. They faced a specific threat. Smugglers have a staining plan for when they are caught. They open a scuttling valve. They sink the sub. They take the drugs to the bottom of the ocean. If it sinks, the mission is a failure. The evidence disappears. The Coast Guard has less than 2 minutes to act once the sub begins to take on water. The team on the small boat shouted in Spanish, "Alto su barco." The sub ignored the command. It kept moving. The interceptor boat pulled alongside the substern. Engine noise drowned out the waves. Spray blinded the crew. The 2 vessels were inches apart. If they touched, the small boat could flip. If a guardsman fell between them, they would be crushed. Mills made the decision. He did not wait for a ladder or a calmer sea. He saw the gap and leaped. Now Mills is on the hatch. He is shouting. He is hammering. Back on the Monroe, Captain Estramonte listened to the radio. He could not see the video yet. He only heard the updates from the helicopter. First man on. Second man on. Boarding team has positive control. The tension was at the limit. The sub could dive at any moment. The smugglers could be armed behind the steel plate. The team on top had zero cover. They stood in the open ocean on a moving target. The hatch moved. It cracked open. A single hand came out first. It was empty. Then a head appeared. A suspect climbed out with his hands raised. All 5 men surrendered. They were pulled off the sub and onto the interceptors. The team moved inside the vessel. The hull was cramped. It smelled of diesel fuel and sweat. They found the cargo. 17,000 pounds of cocaine sat in the belly of the craft. The street value was $232 million. The mission did not end with the arrests. The crew had to unload the drugs. It took 12 hours of manual labor in the heat. Once the sub was empty, it remained a hazard to navigation. The crew decided to scuttle it. Even then, the vessel was stubborn. Captain Estramonte noted it did not go down easily. It was built to survive the deep ocean. This was one part of a larger deployment. During that mission, the Monroe crew stopped 14 smuggling vessels. They seized 39,000 pounds of cocaine and 933 pounds of marijuana. The total value reached $569 million. They arrested 55 smugglers across the Pacific. On July 11, the Monroe arrived at Naval Base San Diego. Vice President Mike Pence stood on the deck. He told the crew their service was saving American lives. Jonathan Mills received the Coast Guard Medal. It is the highest non-combat award for heroism the service gives. The video went viral because it stripped away the report-style wording. It showed speed, it showed the risk, it showed a split-second decision in a place where most people never go. The operation worked because one person stopped waiting. He did not wait for the sub to stop. He did not wait for the water to calm down. He jumped. Most people have no idea the Coast Guard operates at this level. This footage removed the excuse not to know. In the middle of the ocean, there is no room for hesitation. You act or the target is gone. Mills acted. The sub stopped. The drugs never reached the shore. He didn't wait. Hey, it's time. Those were the first words of a post that appeared on 4chan's random board, and for the first few minutes, nobody took them seriously. On an anonymous forum known for constant trolling and empty threats, a user claiming he was about to commit a high-profile crime usually isn't cause for alarm. Most people scrolling past likely thought it was just another person looking for attention or trying to shock a bored audience. But this time, the person behind the screen wasn't joking. The post was incredibly specific. The user identified himself as Neil McInnes and stated clearly that he was a student at New River Community College in Christiansburg, Virginia. He even went as far as to mention the school's proximity to Virginia Tech, a detail that added a heavy layer of attention given that area's history. He claimed the news never gets the details right, so he was providing them himself. He talked about the firearm he had brought with him, his lack of experience with it, and even included a link to a site where he intended to live stream the event. He ended the rant by linking to his own student portfolio, effectively unmasking himself before he had even stood up from his chair. He finished the post with a simple, chilling sentence: "I'm here at school writing this. Wish me luck." Just 3 minutes after that post went live, the situation transitioned from a digital threat to a physical reality.
Yo, there's a guy shooting at the New River Mall right now. He's shooting a shotgun at the mall right now.
Okay, stay on the line.
He told us to get out of the way. He said, leave now. He's just shooting at the mall right now. He's shooting at the school right now.
You said at the NRV Mall, right?
At the NRV Mall, yes.
Okay, where is he at in the mall?
He's at the school right now. Everyone's running out of school right now. He's shooting up people right now.
Neil McInnes walked onto the New River Community College campus, which was uniquely located inside the New River Valley Mall. He wasn't there to attend class. He was there to follow through on the plan he had just outlined for a group of strangers online. As he began his attempt to attack those around him, his own admitted lack of experience became the only thing standing between his targets and a tragedy. In the initial moments of the confrontation, he struggled with the mechanics of his weapon. Reports indicate he actually forgot to disengage the safety while attempting to fire at his first few targets. That small technical error provided a vital window of time, a few seconds of confusion that allowed several students to recognize the danger and flee the immediate area. However, the danger didn't end there. Once he managed to get the firearm functional, he began moving through the campus. For the next 4 minutes, the mall was filled with the sound of gunfire and chaos as students and shoppers scrambled for cover.
Christiansburg 911, where's your emergency?
Hi, someone was trying to shoot the New River Community College with a shotgun. Told everyone to run.
New River Community College with a shotgun?
Yes, ma'am.
During this window, 2 students were struck, Taylor Sharp and Christina Casagrande. Both suffered serious injuries as McInnes continued to search for more targets. The situation only came to an end when an off-duty security guard took action. Displaying immense composure, the guard managed to tackle McInnes and detain him before he could move deeper into the mall or find more victims. By the time the police arrived, the threat had been neutralized. The aftermath was a long road for everyone involved. Both Taylor and Christina faced months of difficult medical recovery, though fortunately both survived the attack. Neil McInnes was arrested at the scene and eventually faced the legal consequences of his actions. He was charged with 2 counts of malicious wounding and 2 counts of using a firearm in the commission of a felony. While his specific motivations remained a subject of debate, he eventually pleaded guilty to all 4 felony charges. The court sentenced him to 68 years in prison, with 30 of those years suspended, resulting in a 38-year active sentence. The events of that afternoon serve as a stark reminder of how quickly an anonymous post can turn into a real-world crisis, and how the quick thinking of those on the scene can be the only thing that prevents a worst-case scenario. A woman named Leah posted a video after something unusual started happening in her home. For several weeks, her daughter had been dealing with intense night terrors. Almost every night, she would wake up crying, sometimes refusing to go back to sleep. At first, it seemed like normal childhood nightmares, something a lot of kids go through. But one night felt different. Aaliyah was in her bedroom when her daughter suddenly ran in, crying harder than usual. She looked panicked, like she had just seen something, not dreamed it. Instead of brushing it off, Aaliyah picked up her phone and started recording, planning to show the footage to her daughter's doctor. She tries to calm her down, telling her everything is okay, that nothing is there, but her daughter isn't focused on her. She's staring past her, toward the window. Aaliyah turns the camera, and that's when it happens.
there, baby. Come on, you're a big girl. I'm a big girl. It's okay. There's the vent right there, baby. See? The vent pushes the door. You're fine, okay? You big girl? You're scared, just remember. Baby Lenny's here, mommy's here. We're all gonna be together in the same house. It's gonna be okay. Let's go to bed. What's wrong, Cora? What are you afraid of? You're scaring me, honey. I don't see it.
The blinds begin to move, not just one section, all of them at the same exact time. Each part closes together in sync, even though they're controlled separately. There's no one near the window, nothing touching them, no visible movement that would explain it. For a moment, no one says anything. Aaliyah tries to explain it away in real time. She points toward a nearby vent, saying maybe it's just air pushing against the blinds. She's trying to keep her daughter calm, trying to keep herself calm, but something about it feels off. The next day, she records another video to show how the blinds actually work. Each section has its own rod. They don't move together. To close all of them at once, someone would have to physically stand there and adjust each one. There's no motor, no remote, no system connecting them. They aren't designed to move like that.
Physically standing by the blinds in order to close them like this, and also all 4 of them close at the exact same time. It's not electronic, it's not battery powered, That's not creepy. I'm trying my best not to freak out.
Then she brings up something else, a door. In another clip from that same night, the bedroom door slowly moves on its own. Some people suggested it could be airflow from the air conditioning, but Aaliyah checks the AC wasn't running. She even compares it to other recordings when the air is on. The sound is different, the movement is different, it doesn't match.
The AC was not on when the door closed. It's very loud. And you can hear it coming from the vent. The air vent could not have pushed this door closed in that other video because the air was not on, the AC was not.
Now she's left trying to figure out what actually happened. Her daughter is still afraid at night, still waking up, still refusing to sleep alone. And now after seeing the footage, Aaliyah isn't sure it's just nightmares anymore. She thinks her daughter might be seeing something she can't see, and if that's true, then whatever moved those blinds might still be inside the house. Watch closely. What do you think is actually happening here? A camera is fixed on an open plaza. The sun is bright and the area is quiet. In the center of the frame, a VIP stands motionless. He is surrounded by 4 men in dark suits. They don't have tactical gear or visible rifles. Their hands are clasped in front of them, and they look like any other high-level escort team. A few yards away, a crowd of people watches. The vibe is completely relaxed. Then a man starts to move. He's coming from the edge of the crowd, walking at a steady, casual pace. He looks like a fan. He looks like someone who just wants a handshake or a photo. There is no aggression in his posture, no sudden sprint. He simply closes the gap. As he reaches the edge of the security circle, his hand dips toward his pocket. It's a tiny movement. Most people wouldn't even see it, but the team does. In a single heartbeat, the man pulls out an object. It is in a pen. The transition is instant. 1 second, the security detail is a loose circle of people. The next, they're a solid machine. They don't scramble. They don't panic. They transform. 2 men on the side launch forward. They don't just reach for the attacker. They erase the space between them. Their movement is explosive but perfectly controlled. While they hit the threat, the rest of the team collapses inward toward the VIP. They become a human wall, physically shielding him with their own bodies. The attacker is neutralized. He is pinned and stripped of the object before the viewer can even blink. The VIP is already being moved away, shielded from every possible angle. Then the sound hits. It isn't screaming. It isn't the sound of a crowd running for their lives. It's clapping. People are cheering. They are nodding in approval. They aren't terrified. They are impressed. That sound is the first real clue that your brain just lied to you. You weren't watching an assassination attempt. You were watching a sport. This footage was filmed in Bulgaria, a place with one of the most deep-seated security cultures in the world. What looks like a terrifying public attack is actually the Bodyguard Championship. It is a formal, multi-discipline competition where elite private security teams go head-to-head. They aren't just protecting a person, they're competing for a score. To understand why this video reached 10 million views, you have to look at how people first saw it. When this was uploaded, there was zero context, no subtitles, no explanation. Millions of people watched it and saw a real-world disaster being stopped by superhuman reflexes. People in the comments spent months debating who the VIP was. They argued about whether there were more attackers waiting in the crowd. They analyzed every frame, convinced they were seeing a masterclass in real-world survival. Some even claimed it had to be fake because no real team could move that perfectly under the pressure of a real gun. They were half right. It was a setup, but not the kind they thought. In Bulgaria, private security is a massive industry. At one point, nearly 1 in every 11 working men in the country was employed in security. This competition is the peak of that professional world. The teams are judged on a range of grueling tests. They have to find hidden bombs under cars. They have to show precision during high-speed chases, and they have to master the walking escort. The exact scene you see in the clip. A referee calls a start. Trained assistants play the attackers, using fake weapons to test the team's reaction time. A panel of judges sits nearby with clipboards. They aren't looking for drama. They are looking for clean execution. Did the team keep the formation? Did they cover the VIP's head? How many seconds did it take to pin the threat down? Once the internet figured out this was a competition, the audience changed. The mystery seekers left, and the professionals moved in. Security experts started using the clip as a training tool. They broke down the footwork and the hand placement. The video stopped being a viral mystery and became a masterclass. It proves that under extreme pressure, you don't rise to the occasion. You sink to the level of your training. These men didn't react because they were surprised. They reacted because they had practiced this exact move 1,000 times. The threat was a drill. The precision was real. In protection, if you have to think, you've already lost. The team didn't think, they just moved. The mystery started with a strange discovery inside a standard software case. A user on 4chan's paranormal board claimed that his father had purchased a specialized engineering program at a computer expo in Rochester, New York. When they opened the case, they found more than just the engineering software. Tucked inside was a second, unlabeled CD. There was no branding, no title, and no instructions. Just a digital file titled Station. Initially, the find seemed like a typical tech curiosity, but the contents were anything but standard. The disk contained a game built in Blender, along with a collection of DLL files required to run it. When the user first shared the story, he didn't post a link. Instead, he asked people to reply with their email addresses so he could send the file directly. To the seasoned users of 4chan, this looked like a classic phishing scam or a simple way to spread a virus. However, 25 minutes later, the original poster returned with a public download link. After the community ran the files through antivirus software and confirmed they were clean, the exploration of Station began. The game itself was a first-person 3D experience with a very crude, unsettling aesthetic. It didn't have an intro or a menu. Booting it up dropped the player immediately into a desolate landscape. The environment consisted of an empty warehouse, some gas tanks, and a dark road lined with low-resolution trees. Nearby, a pier stretched out into nothingness. The entire experience was underscored by a repetitive droning audio track that set a heavy tone for the gameplay. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. The player was free to wander the small, restricted map, but eventually a loud noise would trigger, and the entities would appear. These were floating, spherical faces that began to relentlessly chase the player. The mechanics were simple. If a face touched you, the game instantly crashed to the desktop. As time went on, the difficulty spiked, spawning multiple faces until the player was inevitably caught. On the surface, it looked like a basic, poorly made horror game, the kind of project a student might put together over a weekend. But 4 days into the investigation, a player noticed something hidden on one of the outer warehouse walls. It wasn't a texture glitch or a random decoration. It was a set of geographic coordinates. When these coordinates were entered into Google Maps, the mystery shifted from a weird piece of software to a real-world location. They pointed to a specific warehouse in the middle of Siberia, Russia. The location was incredibly remote, situated near the diamond mining town of Mirny. This town is famous for the Mir mine, which is the second largest man-made excavation in the world, a massive gaping hole in the earth. The connection between the game and this location became even more grounded when users compared the in-game warehouse to satellite imagery of the real one. The layout was nearly identical. The discovery raised immediate questions. Why would a crude indie game found in New York point toward a high-security mining facility in Russia? MYUU isn't a typical tourist destination. It's a restricted area guarded by the military where outsiders are generally not permitted. This led to the realization that whoever developed Station likely had personal knowledge of or access to that specific Russian site. As the threat grew, the line between verified facts and internet legend began to blur. It's important to distinguish what was actually in the game from what was added by the community later. The coordinates on the wall were a confirmed part of the original file. However, in the months that followed, other clues emerged that were much harder to verify. For instance, one user claimed to have found an SSTV or slow scan television file buried in the game's code. SSTV is a method used to transmit images over radio waves. When decoded, this supposedly produced an image pointing to another set of coordinates in the Russian wilderness. Another user claimed to find a hidden URL for a site called searproinem.com. While that site did exist at one point, it appeared to be a password-protected repository for old military files and images of debunked UFO sightings. The owner of that site eventually claimed he just hosted the game because he thought it was interesting, not because he was part of a grand conspiracy. Because the game pointed to a restricted Russian military town, the theories started to get dark. Without any evidence, people began linking the Station game to shady medical research, human experimentation, or even organ trafficking. These theories were fueled by the entities in the game, those floating faces, which some interpreted as the spirits of victims or the results of failed experiments. However, there has never been a shred of proof connecting the software to any criminal activity at the MYUU site. So what exactly was Station.exe? If we look at the evidence realistically, two main theories stand out. The first is the Thomas theory. Some players noticed that the floating faces in the game bear a striking resemblance to the characters from Thomas the Tank Engine. The name Station could simply be a reference to a train station. In this version of events, the game was just a bizarre creepypasta project made by a fan of the show who happened to use a real Russian warehouse as a reference for his map. The second, and perhaps more likely theory, is that this was an abandoned alternate reality game or ARG. When tech-savvy users analyzed the game files, they discovered it was built using a version of Blender that hadn't been released at the time the original poster claimed his father bought the disc. This proved the bought it years ago at an expo story was a lie. It's possible the original poster created the game himself and tried to start a mystery, but when the community caught him in a lie about the timeline, he lost interest and walked away. Once the original creator went silent, other internet users likely stepped in to keep the flame alive. It's a common phenomenon in online mysteries. When a story starts to die, people discover fake clues like SSTV files or hidden websites to prevent the thread from reaching an anticlimactic end. 13 years later, and we still don't have a definitive answer. We have a game that accurately modeled a restricted building in Siberia, a set of coordinates, and a creator who vanished the moment he was questioned. Whether it was a failed art project or a genuine glimpse into someone's life in a closed Russian city, Station remains a digital artifact of a time when the internet could still turn a random CD into a global hunt for the truth. The warehouse is still there in MYUU, sitting in the shadow of the world's largest diamond pipe, but the person who put it in the game has never been heard from again. A group of friends who were on a YouTube channel decided to investigate an abandoned hotel in Japan. Locals have always claimed the building is filled with moving shadows and figures after dark. When they first arrived, they walked through the halls for several minutes. For a while, nothing. They didn't find anything unusual. To cover more ground, they decided to split up and explore different sections of the hotel alone. While climbing a central staircase, one of the members caught something on his camera that he didn't see at the time. A dark figure appears on the landing above him, standing completely still. He pans the camera away for just a second to check its footing. For a moment, nothing. Then it's gone. When the camera moves back, the landing is empty. He had no idea he wasn't alone until he watched the footage later that night. After an hour of searching with no other sightings, the group tried something else. They set up stationary cameras in the hallways and left the building to let them run overnight. One of the cameras captured something else. At first, the hallway is empty, then something comes into frame. A pale face moves forward slowly and stops, staring directly into the lens for several seconds before pulling back into the dark. The group came back the next day to collect their cameras. The building looked exactly the same, empty, but after reviewing the footage, one thing was clear. They weren't alone in that hotel. What do you think was standing on those stairs? The camera inside the foundry is pointed straight at the furnace melt pool. It is a normal shift at an aluminum recycling plant. A forklift operator drives his machine toward the mouth of the furnace. He is carrying a sow, which is a heavy solid block of scrap metal. He lines up the forks, tilts the carriage, and drops a load into the liquid metal. The world turns white. In a fraction of a second, the furnace doesn't just splash, it detonates. A violent wall of fire and molten metal shoots out from the melt pool. It hits the ceiling and covers the entire frame. Liquid aluminum is burning at over 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. It sprays across the floor like rain. The forklift is instantly buried in a cloud of thick black smoke and heat. It looks like a direct hit. From this angle, it seems impossible for the driver to be alive. The metal is everywhere. It's on the floor, it's on the machine, and it's hanging in the air. Then the smoke shifts. The forklift starts to move. Through the haze of the explosion, the operator throws the machine into reverse. He doesn't panic, he doesn't jump out while the wheels are turning. He backs the forklift away from the furnace. He steers it to the side of the building and brings it to a controlled stop. He sets the brake, steps out of the cab, and walks toward the safety exit. He is completely uninjured. People who watch this footage are usually stunned by how calm the driver looks. He moves with a steady, deliberate energy. It looks like he's just finishing a routine task, not escaping a fireball. But foundry professionals who saw this clip know exactly what they are looking at. That driver wasn't being casual, he was being professional. In a foundry, panic kills. When molten metal reacts, it releases hydrogen and oxygen gases. Breathing those in can be fatal. The training is simple. You do not sit and stare at the disaster. You move the equipment to a clear zone, you park it so it doesn't block emergency crews, then you get yourself to fresh air. One tiny detail saved his life. If you look closely at the front of the forklift cab, there is a clear, thick plastic protective shield. Most viewers miss it because it's transparent, but that shield is the only reason the driver isn't covered in liquid metal. It took the full force of the splash. It was a physical barrier between the operator and a 600 degrees Celsius shower. Without that plastic sheet, the driver doesn't walk away. This security camera footage from March 2025 was posted by a woman named Brandy. She explained that late one night, she and her husband were suddenly woken up by strange noises coming from downstairs. At first, nothing. They stayed in bed, but the sounds didn't stop. The next morning, they checked the footage to see what had been moving through the house while they were asleep. It starts with a flash. A bright light begins pulsing inside the room, strong enough to wake the dog. The dog sits up immediately, staring toward the doorway. Then something appears. A pale face shows up right next to the doorframe. It stays there for a few seconds, then disappears back into the dark. Then something else happens. A small, dark figure steps into the frame. It stands there for a moment, completely still, before vanishing instantly. Brandy says she and her husband were the only people in the house that night, asleep upstairs. The doors were locked. Nothing was out of place, but the camera still caught something moving through the room. What do you think was standing in that doorway? A A motorcycle cuts across traffic and forces a rider to stop. The sun is high over a crowded intersection in East Sao Paulo. A 35-year-old security guard named Anderson is riding his Honda Hornet through midday traffic. A camera is strapped to his helmet from his usual weekend rides. That camera captures everything. As he approaches the corner of Avenue Doutor Assis Ribeiro and Gabriela Mistral, a red motorcycle carrying two men swerves directly in front of him and cuts him off hard. He brakes immediately, but the bike hasn't even fully stopped before the passenger jumps off. The man moves fast, grabbing the left handlebar of Anderson's Hornet to lock it in place. Then he pulls a .38 caliber revolver and raises it, the barrel pointed straight at Anderson's face. Everything stops. The demand is simple. The bike. Anderson doesn't argue. He raises his hands, palms open, then slowly reaches down, pulls the keys from the ignition, and hands them over. He steps back, putting space between himself and the gun. It's quick, it's controlled, but it's not over. The robber, later identified as Escalante Leonardo Santos, swings his leg over the stolen Honda and tries to balance the bike while still holding the weapon. His focus is locked on the ignition and the escape. He thinks he's in control. He's wrong. Across the street, an off-duty military police captain named Antonio Bernardo is sitting in his car at a red light. From his position, he has seen everything. The cutoff, the gun, the handoff. He doesn't panic. He pulls the handbrake, unbuckles his seatbelt, and draws his weapon, keeping it low. Then he waits. This is the most dangerous moment. If he moves too early, the robber could turn and fire at Anderson. If he waits too long, the bike is gone. He watches carefully, waiting for one thing, the gap. For the first time, he's no longer right next to Anderson. That's it. The captain opens his car door and steps out. 2 shots. Sharp control. Santos is hit in the leg and the abdomen and drops instantly, collapsing onto the pavement. The Honda falls with him, scraping across the asphalt. The situation flips in a second. The accomplice doesn't stay. He twists the throttle and disappears into traffic without looking back. Now the street is quiet again. Santos lies on the ground, bleeding and disarmed. Anderson walks back toward his bike. The shock is wearing off, replaced by anger. He stands over the man who just pointed a gun at him. The camera picks it up clearly. "Go rob in hell, you punk. My bike will take you there." Police and emergency crews arrive soon after. Santos is taken to the hospital for surgery. He survives and is later charged with attempted aggravated robbery. The footage is reviewed by Sao Paulo military police, and the conclusion is clear. The captain's actions were legitimate. Frame-by-frame analysis shows that just before the shots, Santos had started to turn with a weapon. The threat was still active. Anderson uploads the video to thank the officer who stepped in, but the clip spreads fast. It's downloaded, re-uploaded, and viewed millions of times across different platforms. People don't just watch it for the robbery, they watch it for the timing. The robber was fast, the captain was patient, and that patience is what changed everything. He didn't rush the moment, he waited for it. Then he moved, and that was enough. In the early 2000s, the internet was a largely unregulated frontier. Hidden among the standard message boards and hobbyist sites were corners of the web dedicated to the darkest impulses imaginable. One of these places was a forum known as the Cannibal Cafe. While the site's administrators claimed the content was purely for roleplay and fantasy, the reality was much more literal. It was here in early 2001 that a user posting under the alias Frankie began a very specific search. His post was blunt and bypassed any pretense of fiction. He was looking for a young man, specifically between the ages of 18 and 25, who was willing to be killed and consumed. For several days, the post sat in the digital ether, a shocking request that most would dismiss as a dark joke or a cry for attention, while a few people initially responded to the thread. The gravity of the request eventually caused them to withdraw, all of them except for one man, a computer engineer named Bernd Brands. Unlike the other users on the forum, Brands wasn't interested in the fantasy of the act. He harbored a lifelong desire to be consumed, and in the user known as Frankie, he believed he had found someone willing to facilitate that end. The two began a private correspondence via email, moving away from the public forum to discuss the logistics of their meeting. Through these exchanges, Brands learned that his contact was actually a man named Armin Mewis, living in the quiet village of Rotenburg, Germany. On the evening of March 9, 2001, Bernd Brands arrived at Mewis' home. The events that followed are well documented because, according to later police reports, nearly every moment of the encounter was captured on a 4-hour VHS tape. The night began with a series of deliberate, increasingly violent acts, all of which were carried out with the full consent and participation of Brands. The situation began with an attempt to consume a part of Brand's body while he was still alive. MYUU attempted to comply with a specific request from Brands, but the initial attempt was unsuccessful. Eventually, they moved to the kitchen, where a portion of the body was prepared and cooked. However, the process did not go as planned, and the resulting meal was reportedly inedible. As the night progressed, Brands' physical condition began to deteriorate rapidly due to significant blood loss. MYUU eventually escorted him to a bathtub upstairs. To ease the process, MYUU provided Brands with a combination of alcohol and painkillers. While Brands lay in the tub, drifting in and out of consciousness, MYUU ended his life. What happened over the next few hours is one of the most unsettling aspects of the case. While Brands lay deceased in the bathroom, MYUU reportedly sat nearby and calmly spent several hours reading a novel. It wasn't until later that he began the process of dismembering the body. He worked with methodical precision, eventually moving the remains into a deep freezer where he stored them alongside ordinary groceries, such as frozen pizzas. Over the next 10 months, MYUU lived a double life. To his neighbors and co-workers, he was a quiet, unassuming man. In private, he followed through on his pact with Brands, eventually consuming over 40 pounds of the remains. During this time, he frequently returned to the Cannibal Cafe forum. He began posting updates about his success, describing the events of that March night in clinical and boastful detail to the other users. The case only came to light because of the internet's inherent lack of true privacy. In December 2002, a college student in Innsbruck stumbled upon MYUU's posts. Unlike the other users who had ignored or encouraged the behavior, this student recognized the descriptions as a record of an actual crime rather than a fantasy. He contacted the police, providing them with the details and the username. The German authorities launched a raid on MYUU's home in Rotenburg. During the search, they discovered the remains in the freezer and the infamous videotape. MYUU was arrested immediately, but his trial created a massive legal controversy that gripped the German judicial system. Because Brands had been a completely willing participant and had traveled to the house specifically to die, there was a significant debate over whether the act constituted murder or killing on request, a much lesser charge in German law. Initial court proceedings led to a conviction of manslaughter, resulting in an 8.5-year sentence. However, this sparked a public outcry, and the case was eventually retired. In 2006, the court overturned the previous ruling, and MYUU was convicted of murder. The prosecution argued that he had committed the act for his own sexual gratification, which elevated the crime to murder regardless of the victim's consent. Armin MYUU remains incarcerated today, serving a life sentence in a facility in Frankfurt. Over the years, he has reportedly become a vegetarian and has spoken in various interviews about his past, though he maintains that he simply fulfilled a mutual agreement. As for the 4-hour videotape, it remains one of the most notorious pieces of lost media in existence. Because of its extreme and disturbing nature, the German government has strictly prohibited its release to the public. It has only been screened for a small number of people, including judges, lawyers, and forensic experts involved in the trial. Those who have seen it describe a document that is profoundly difficult to process, not just because of the visuals, but because of the calm, transactional nature of the entire event. The story of the Rotenburg cannibal is not a typical tale of a predator and a prey. It is a grounded, somber look at how a French digital subculture provided a platform for two individuals to realize a lethal obsession. It remains a case that challenges legal definitions of consent and stands as a permanent mark on the history of the early internet. A young man was filming a quick tour of his room at an isolated forest hotel. At first, everything looks normal. The space is quiet, the door is locked, and he is clearly alone. He pans the camera across the furniture and the bed, showing the layout of the small suite. Then the lens passes over a large mirror on the wall. That's when it happens. In the reflection, a woman with a pale face is sitting there, staring directly into the camera. But when the camera reaches that part of the room, the space is completely empty. There is no one on the chair and no one in the shadows. She only appears in the mirror. The man didn't see anything while he was recording. He only realized what was there after watching the footage back later that night. He says the room was empty and the door was locked. If she wasn't in the room, what was the mirror showing? Queso is leaning back in his chair, the glow of his monitors reflecting off his headset. He's in the middle of a classic stream, the kind his community of 60,000 live viewers lives for. The vibe is relaxed. He's deep into a story about his Aunt Judy, telling the chat about her trip to the local library to read to some kids. It's a low-stakes hometown tale. He's animated using his aunts, laughing at his own jokes, and the chat is scrolling so fast, it's a blur of emotes and lulls. Everything feels normal. Then in the middle of a sentence, Case stops. He freezes. His eyes start toward the window behind his setup, just off camera. The laughter stops. The air in the room feels like it just changed. Chat, he says. His voice has dropped an octave. It's no longer the loud, booming personality everyone knows. It's quiet, it's real. I just saw a flashing green light at my window. He's staring at the glass now. The room behind him is dark, and the Arkansas night outside is pitch black. In a trailer out in the woods, a light at the window isn't just a distraction, it's a threat. He leans in closer to the monitor, his face tight with genuine concern, and as soon as I looked, he whispers. The flashing green light stopped, and I saw something move away from the window. The chat explodes. The scrolling blur turns into frantic wall of text. The lulls are replaced by W and mangas. Panic starts to ripple through the digital crowd. 10,000 messages hit the screen at once. Call the police, one viewer types in all caps. Get the gun, says another. Case, get out of there, someone is swatting you. People are convinced. In a world where high-profile streamers deal with stalkers and home invasions, this isn't a joke anymore. 60,000 people are watching a potential crime happen in real time. Case stays frozen, his eyes locked on the dark pane of glass. He's looking for a silhouette. He's looking for anything that confirms a human being is standing 3 feet away from him in the dark. The silence on the stream is deafening. For a solid 10 seconds, nobody breathes. Case is bracing himself. He's thinking about the long hours he spent working maintenance for his dad's landscaping company before this fame, back when the only thing he had to worry about was a declining debit card at Family Dollar. Now he's a target. He's the content creator of the year, and someone is outside his house with a camera. He leans toward the window, squinting into the blackness. He's looking for a person. He's looking for a stalker. Then he sees it. It's not a camera. It's not a flashlight. It's not a person. It's a single small insect hovering inches from the glass. It's a firefly. The green glow pulses one more time, soft, natural, and completely harmless. The movement he saw away from the window was just the bug drifting into the yard. Case sinks back into his chair. The tension drains out of his shoulders so fast, he looks like he's melting. He puts his head in his hands and lets out a breath he's been holding for 2 minutes. In the world of live content, there are no scripts, there is no take two. You're either for what's coming or you're caught on camera reacting to a bug. Case found his composure, pulled his headset back up, and went right back to the story about Aunt Judy. The stream moved on, but the clip lived forever. It was a reminder that when you're live, the smallest light can cast the biggest shadow. The bug didn't break in, but it sure broke the internet. Relief is a powerful thing. A man named Carter had only been living in his new rental for a few days when the house began to push back. It started with small, strange noises, but late one night, the activity escalated. Carter woke up to a bizarre rhythmic sound echoing from the living room. It was a piano. He got out of bed to investigate, moving cautiously toward the source of the music.
Who's there?
But as soon as he approached the living room doorway, the piano suddenly stopped. The silence was immediate. Carter decided to stay in the room, waiting and watching to see if he could find a rational explanation for the keys moving on their own. Then it starts again. The piano begins playing a melody while Carter is standing right there. As he watches, the heavy wooden chair tucked in front of the keys begins to slide backward across the floor, moving entirely on its own. For a moment, nothing moves. Then the realization hits. Carter didn't wait around for a third event. He ran out the front door, intending to spend the night at a friend's place. But as he was walking toward his car, he looked back at the house. Through the window, he saw the television screen flicker to life in the empty living room. Then the interior lights began to pulse and flicker rapidly. Carter eventually moved out for good, leaving the house behind. If the piano stopped when he got close, why did it start again while he was watching? At 10:22 a.m. on Saturday, August 12, 2023, the quiet of the Rustic Ridge neighborhood in Plum, Pennsylvania did not just break, it evaporated. A Ring doorbell camera across the street captured the exact second of the disaster. In the footage, the house at 141 Rustic Ridge Drive is there, solid, 2 stories, a family home. A fraction of a second later, it's gone. There is no fire first, no slow collapse, and no warning. The structure is replaced by a massive violent expansion of white and gray debris that shoots hundreds of feet into the air. The shockwave hits the camera, shaking the frame as the sound of the blast catches up. Roof shingles, insulation, and splintered wood rain down on the street. The 2 neighboring houses on either side are immediately hammered by the force. Their windows shatter, their walls cave in, and within moments, both are consumed by aggressive, fast-moving fires. The first 911 calls were frantic. Dispatchers were told the house had exploded, but when the first responders arrived, they found a crater. 18 different fire departments converged on the scene. The heat was so intense that 57 firefighters had to be treated for exhaustion. They weren't just fighting flames, they were digging through a massive pile of burning rubble, desperate to find anyone who might still be alive beneath the remains of the foundation. As the smoke began to clear, the names of those inside started to emerge. This was not just a collection of random individuals. This was the core of the local community. 6 people lost their lives in the blast. Heather Orovitz, 51, was the borough's community development director. She was a woman dedicated to the growth and safety of the town she lived in. Her husband, Paul Orovitz, 56, was with her. Paul survived the initial explosion, but suffered severe burns over nearly his entire body. He was rushed to UPMC Mercy, where he fought for 4 days before he passed away. Michael Thomas, 57, was also in the house. He was the Plum Borough manager, a colleague of Heather's and a longtime public servant. Then there was Kevin Sabuna, 55. His family and neighbors didn't just see him as a construction worker. They called him the go-to guy. If a sink leaked or a door stuck, Kevin was the one who showed up with a toolbox. Finally, there was Casey Klontz, who was only 12 years old. Casey was known for his sense of humor and his deep devotion to his family. Keegan was a young athlete who loved football. In the days following the tragedy, his teammates gathered at their practice field. They took a knee at the 40-yard line because 40 was Keegan's jersey number. They hung his jersey on the goalpost in a silent tribute to a boy who was described as the perfect teammate. The human impact of that Saturday morning is difficult to measure. Kevin Sabuna's daughter was in Texas when she received a frantic call from her mother at 11:48 a.m. Her mother told her that Kevin was trapped in the basement of the house and that everything was on fire. She boarded the first flight she could find, but by the time she landed, the news had turned from a rescue mission to a recovery. Casey Klontz's wife also received a brief, terrifying call. Casey had managed to phone her to say that he, Keegan, and Kevin were trapped. Then the line went dead. It was the last time she would ever hear his voice. The survivors are left with a grief that is compounded by the loss of their physical surroundings. Kelly Sabuna, Kevin's wife, expressed the weight of the tragedy by explaining that she wasn't just losing a husband, she was losing her best friends and her entire social circle. Even though my girls moved away, this was our home, she said. These were all our best friends that passed away. I'm grieving the loss of all my friends and all of our homes. As the community mourned, the focus shifted to a single burning question. How does a house simply vanish? By July 2025, the families had filed lawsuits against 4 companies, including gas and utility providers. The legal filings present a specific theory of what happened that morning. The lawsuits claimed that methane gas from a ruptured pipeline had been leaking into the soil. Because methane is odorless and colorless, it can migrate through the ground and accumulate in low-lying areas like basements without anyone knowing it's there. The suit alleges that the gas built up in the Orovitz's basement over a period of time. On that Saturday morning, the Orovitzes had noticed something was wrong. Their water heater was making strange, uncharacteristic noises. They called Kevin Sabuna, their trusted neighbor, to come over and take a look. Casey and Keegan Klontz followed him over to help. Attorneys for the family stated that those strange noises from the water heater were likely caused by the external gas pressure already building up within the system. When the gas reached a high enough concentration, a single spark, perhaps from the water heater itself or a light switch, was all it took to trigger the massive explosion. The lawsuit argues that at multiple points leading up to the disaster, steps could have been taken to detect the leak and prevent the deaths of these 6 people. Today, the lot at 141 Rustic Ridge Drive is empty. It is a flat patch of grass where a home in a community once stood. Taylor Orovitz, who lost both of her parents that day, now wears the GPS coordinates of the house tattooed on her forearm. It is a permanent reminder of a place she can never go back to. She still asks the question that the entire neighborhood is struggling with. Why them? Why her parents? Why that specific morning? The official investigation into the Plum House explosion remains open as experts continue to analyze soil samples and pipeline integrity. While the legal battles and technical investigations move forward, the neighborhood is left to find a way to heal. Disasters like this remind us that life is fragile and that the things we take for granted, like the ground beneath our feet and the safety of our four walls, can change in an instant. The people of Rustic Ridge weren't just neighbors. They were a family. They looked out for each other. They helped each other with repairs, and they spent their Saturday mornings together. That bond is the only thing the explosion couldn't destroy. The lot is empty, but the memory of the people who live there is held tightly by the ones they left behind. They aren't just names in a report or faces on the news. They were the heart of a community that is still trying to find its way home.